Welcome into the Take Command Pregame Show, live from Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor, where doors open in a little over an hour from now. Logan Paulsen, that is Logan. I am Craig Hoffman. Thanks so much for joining us to get ready for the Commanders and the Giants. And Logan, I just want you to know, for those watching on the YouTube stream, I did not pick the chairs. I did not make it so that you
fell into this chair.
all of a sudden are shorter than me.
No, it's good.
This is just no, Tim. It's fine. I think it's great. I just didn't pick it.
No, this is fine.
I for once in my life, working with or covering football players, I get to look like a regular-sized human.
Like a giant kind of low-key.
Yeah, I'm not mad about it, but that's okay. If we switched chairs, do you realize I would be like at the table?
I know, it would be very small, very tiny.
Compared to what you would look at. Anyway, the point is the Commanders are playing the Giants today. And it's going to be, I think, an interesting game, Logan, because I can make a very clear and direct argument that the Commanders should smoke the Giants today. Because the Giants' offensive line is as banged up of a unit as I can ever remember seeing. I think it was Kime on his podcast, who somehow gets referenced every week on the show.
Kime's our guy.
He is our guy. So, like, he referenced a game that he and I covered back in 2017 when Kirk was still here, where the Commanders literally had 45 players healthy for a game.
Really?
And they went to Seattle and won.
Wow.
Which was crazy. Like, Brandon Sheriff was active, but couldn't actually physically play.
Mm-hmm.
So there's been, of course, games like that, and for those that cover the league nationally, maybe there's other times that they could bring up references, but it is as banged up a unit. Earl said it in the previous show. Like 7 of their 9 offensive linemen from the opening day roster are hurt.
Do we have a list of that? I hate to put you on the spot, but
I don't have the original, but like for instance, just at left tackle alone, obviously Andrew Thomas, one of the better left tackles in football. He's hurt his hamstring in the first half of week 1, hasn't played since. He's out today. His backup is a guy named Pert. He's out.
Yeah.
I think Shane Lemieux was another guy they would use at that spot. He tore his bicep this week in practice.
Did he really?
And so
he was starting at center or something for him?
They had moved him around.
Yeah.
And so my guy Justin Pugh, Syracuse's own, was there when I was there, goes from straight off the couch to playing left guard to now starting lining up against Chase Young at left tackle. But we know it's a division game. We know the Giants present some problems defensively that could keep them in the game if they can get a couple of things going offensively or against the Commanders' offense. So I think unlike the Chicago game, where you look at the Giants objectively and go, this is probably, by the way, with their backup quarterback, a worse football team than the Chicago Bears were. I think the feeling going in where everyone thought, hey, the Commanders should blow out Chicago, and we all know what happened there, is very different going into this New York game.
Yeah, and I think, versus Chicago, there was like a lens where you were like, they do have the ability to create explosive plays. Their offensive line's playing at a passable level. They run the football well. Like, there was a lot of things you were like, okay, there's something here for Chicago, and there is a world where they win this football game. I don't think we thought they were going to win it the way they won it, but there is a world. And for whatever reason with New York, it doesn't feel that way because of all the things you just mentioned. Backup quarterback, offensive lines in shambles. Even when their offensive line's healthy, it's not playing well. But like when you look at the national narrative around the team, it's like a 2-point game. It's an under one score game. And I think
it's now up to 3 is the latest line, but it was 2.5 for a lot of the week. Like Vegas is expecting it to be close, and these games are always close between these teams.
Yeah, and I think to your point though, like why would that be? Is my question. And I think if you kind of take a step back from like the Commanders' focus that we have, we cover the team every single day almost, or talk about them every single day, is that when I look at this defense for the Giants, I feel like what they do really is kind of like the kryptonite, or kind of exactly where this offense is weak for the Commanders, right? Like they bring a lot of pressure. They lead the league in unblocked pressures. They haven't got home as much. They're like 31st in sacks or something like that. So they haven't got home a ton. But one of the things that Sam Howell does is he holds the football a lot. So if you're holding the football a lot versus unblocked pressures, like they're going to get home. And if they get home more in this game than they've been getting home the last couple of weeks, which every single team we've played against has done, what happens at that interaction? We're taking a lot of sacks. fumbles, interceptions, bad looks, and then all of a sudden you're looking at a team again like this defense for whatever reason did a great job against Miami. I know the score was like 42-20 by the end of the game, but they had a defensive score. They had 3 turnovers in that game. They created 3 turnovers in that game, and so if that game script happens to this Commanders team, it's going to be very challenging for them to win for a myriad of reasons. And everyone says, "Oh, well, their offensive line's terrible." They know their offensive line's terrible.
Right.
They're not going to call a game that's going to leverage that group in a crazy way. You know what I'm saying? They're going to call a game that's conservative.
100%.
Get Tyrod Taylor out of the pocket. Be very selective about when you take your shots. And when you look at the history of this group, the Commanders' defensive line, I know we've been talking a lot about them this week, is when teams call games appropriately, when they have a good game flow in terms of, hey, we're going to run a quick game, we're going to run a screen, we're going to run a play pass, that group gets really, really quiet, or it can get really quiet. And I feel like that's exactly the model they're going to follow in New York this week. And if you can do that, it's going to make it challenging for them to get in a rhythm as rushers. If the game's close and if the defense can keep them in it.
100%. And I think that's like the most important point, right, is the Giants are not on – well, I think there's 2 really important points you make. One is to go back kind of to the weak point and touch on it. Like, the one way where the Bears beat the Commanders is, okay, the one thing they do pretty well is they have explosive plays, and sure enough, they have a bunch of explosive plays. The one thing the Giants do well is blitz, and that is like the other, on the other side of the ball is the weak point for the Commanders. So we'll obviously dive into that here in a little bit. But the Giants, as you said, they're not under some delusion that they're actually good on the offensive line.
Right.
Maybe they would have been at the beginning of the year if they had all their dudes, but like 7 of the 9 dudes that they had from the original bad line are not there.
Yeah.
And so they're going to, one, they have Tyrod Taylor, who's a veteran, who understands this, and we have some data to back that up. 2, they know we've got to move the pocket. We've got to do a couple of different things to keep Tyrod safe from this rush. And so figuring out a plan to overcome that, I think, is an interesting strategic question. But again, like even just getting the ball out of his hands, Tyrod Taylor last week is like 2.6 seconds to throw.
Yeah.
And even his time to sack number is low.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, if you can drop him, get him to drop back and like get a game flow where that's kind of what they have to do, they'll lose pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But Tyrod will get the ball out of his hands, and they will definitely move the pocket. So how do the Commanders, like we kind of know the playbook for keeping a quarterback safe. What's the counter to that? How do the Commanders come up with a blitz plan, a pressure package to actually take advantage of this bad O-line if they're moving Tyrod all over the place?
So I'm kind of maybe old school in this philosophy, but I do think you have to like earn the right to rush the passer, especially against a team like the New York Giants. And what I mean by that is I feel like you need to be really efficient on first and second down when it comes to stopping the run and managing like those boots and keepers we were talking about. If you look at the game flows for the last 2 New York games from last season, like New York did a good job of managing like first and second down really well. They're in like a lot of second and shorts, third and manageables. And when you have a mobile quarterback and a relatively efficient run game and a guy that can get out of the pocket, like those become much more reasonable, right? We talked about last year, like one of the things that elevated them in all those one-score games was that Daniel Jones was able to kind of steal third downs, right? And so Tyrod Taylor has a very similar skill set. So if I'm Washington, I'm saying, how efficient can I be on first and second down? And if you look at Jack, like that's not really like at his core in terms of value, but in this game, I think it's especially important. Let's get to 3rd and 8. And then let's rush the passer. And so obviously I think from a one-on-one standpoint, you feel pretty good about it. But can we continue to kind of give these guys tools to play better? Can we create overloads? Can we show simulated pressures? Can we do some things from a stunt standpoint more frequently that just gives them more opportunities to kind of disrupt the offensive line? And we talked about that on the podcast, but I think that's something that I would say like I'd like to see more of is can we find ways to make their job easier? I know they're really good, and I think that's something that I experienced when I was playing as coaches with good players, rely on them to be good. Like I remember when I was in Atlanta, like Julio Jones is there. It's like, okay, yeah, well if we get in a bind, we'll just throw the ball to Julio. And it's like, I understand that, but what are you doing to help Julio?
What if you took the same things you did for players that aren't that good and applied them to players who are good?
Yeah, like I understand you want, like Julio will win this 19 out of 20 times. Like he's going to win this route all the time. But there's also that time where like the defense knows that he's going to be in trouble. They're going to bracket him. Like, can we motion him? Can we move him around? Can we give him a different stem? Can we give him a different launch point to run the route? Just to make sure that that's easier for him. And I think there's a little bit of that going on the defensive line. And I hear fans talk about it. It's like, oh, they're studs. They should be balling. When you look at defensive lines, really good defensive lines, like they are supported by good game plan, and I think that's also something that Jack could do here, especially if just getting guys in rhythm, I think is important too. So that's something I'd like to see is earn the right to rush the passer on first or second down, and that's going to be hard because they're going to do some stuff. They're going to move the pocket, they're going to run trick plays, they know the score. They're going to need to kind of play above their skis to win this game, but this is a very winnable football game for them. So they're going to make sure that everything's in the bag. So manage first and second down well, get to a third and long, be disciplined in terms of rush angle and approach, and get some pressures. And I think if Jack can kind of, if the defense can do that on first, second down, and then on third down, like have a plan to beat their protection scheme, I think you're going to be in a good spot.
All right, that is Logan Paulsen. I am Craig Hoffman here on the Take Command Pregame Show on a burgundy and gold game day. Still to come this hour, Kevin Sheehan joins us at 10:30. You'll hear a little bit from Eric Bieniemy at 10:45 on how the wide receivers are coming along and hopefully getting on a little bit better same page with Sam Howell and using some different tools and tricks to get a little bit more productivity out of those guys, and especially, of course, Jahan Dotson. That has been a topic of discussion. Coming up next, we'll give some thoughts on the Washington offense and how they can protect Sam Howell against a blitz-happy Giants defense. It's the Take Command Pregame Show on 106.7 The Fan, the Team 980's Burgundy and Gold Game Day.
But I really like physically, like, you know, like one of the points of contention or nervousness going into a game is like, what does this guy do physically? How does he move? Obviously you can study film, but there's a different opportunity to kind of run a route on a guy and put your hands on somebody and kind of know what they like to do to shed and kind of get a feel for it. And so as you get to know them better and they get to know you, you kind of start playing that advanced like chess metric. And I think the familiarity breeds like a faster game quality, because like I know exactly what this defense is. I know exactly how they're going to play this run. We ran it against them, 6 weeks ago. Let's see it again. And we ran it against them last year twice. You know what I'm saying? So you get a really good feel for that. And obviously, like, the fans in the stadium are just a little bit more up. And so I definitely think the divisional thing is real. And you talk about it differently. You talk about divisional games in the week in a different way. So it's definitely something that's 100% real. And in the context of the Giants, like, for whatever reason, they just have a good feel for this team. They have a good feel, good opportunity. Like, in our Take Fives, we talked about some Giant stories. Like, I felt like during early in my playing career, I had a really good feel for what the Giants were doing. Like, I don't know what it was. When I went in that game, I just felt like I knew them really well. And sometimes when the Giants play the Commanders, it's like they just have a good knack and feel for kind of the holes and the wrinkles in the defense and ways to scheme stuff open. So I think divisional games are so fun. They're so fun to watch. They're so fun to play in. And I think they're fun to talk about because, like you said, even in this game where, we're going to talk about the Giants here in a second, Giants aren't a very good football team at the moment. Like, I don't know. And like Santana Moss is this is one of my favorite things he does. He's very consistent with his points of analysis. And anytime we're playing a divisional game, he's like, you can't count the other team out. And I think that's 100% accurate. And so whatever the record is, however bad the Giants have played, like, this team, the Commanders, need to come and like put their best foot forward and just say, like, we are the better football team, we're the better roster, and play like it. And I think ultimately that's what this game comes down to.
It's the Take Command Pregame Show. Craig Hoffman, Logan Paulsen. Streaming live on YouTube as well as, of course, on your radio and the free Odyssey app, 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980. All right, Logan, the Commanders' offense has had one big bugaboo this year. That is protecting the quarterback, Sam Howell. And some of that is Sam obviously protecting himself. But taking sacks and the issues that come with pressure, interceptions, getting sped up, sack fumbles, those things, those have been the biggest issues for the Commanders. And I made this reference on the pod this week, but like if you could, have cryogenically frozen some football person back in like 2018 and been like, all right, hey, we're going to unfreeze you now. Here's a cut up of all of Sam Howell's plays, and you just don't tell him that you don't include the sacks. They think that he's like one of the best quarterbacks in football. He's really been very, very good.
Yeah,
and he's been
excellent.
good. But there's one big bugaboo that is potentially a fatal flaw has continued to be an issue. And I think for the offensive line that has played very, very well this year, the one area where they have also been problematic at times, and it's not so much like an execution thing, it's an assignment alignment thing, is against some of the pressure packages that some of these teams have ramped up, they haven't always gotten the right protection call. Sometimes, again, that's still on Sam to be like, hey, someone's going to be free. You got to throw hot. Like, we can get into the details. Point is, pressure on Sam Howell has been an issue this season. There is no more blitz-happy team over the last couple of years than the New York Giants under Wink Martindale. So how concerned are you about this today, and what can the Commanders and Eric Bieniemy do to ensure that Sam Howell's day and the offense's day isn't ruined by said pressure?
I mean, very concerned. Honestly, very concerned. I think
that makes two of us.
Yeah, there's what is that saying? Like past performance is not an indicator of future results. But like I'm a believer that if you haven't shown that you can change something or you can adjust to something, then it is. So as of right now, every single kind of pressure look that they've got, not every single one, I'm being hyperbolic there, but they have a high tendency versus pressure looks to create sacks. And when you look at the preseason, when you look at the first couple of games of the year, the O-line, you can tell they understand where they should be going. And Sam doesn't get the memo in certain looks. He doesn't understand when he's hot. He doesn't understand when he's not hot. And, I think EB's, to his credit, we talk about protecting a young quarterback. I think a lot of times when EB gets in these empty looks, it gets teams out of stuff that they want to do from a pressure standpoint, because it's like, okay, we got to cover a little bit more here. And I think that there's good precedent for that as an offensive coordinator. However, Wink Martindale's not going to play that. Like, he's going to be like, all right, well, we're okay with the level. If you want to go in empty, we're going to rush 6 or we're going to rush 4 to an overload, and you guys are going to have to show us that you've got it right, and Sam's going to have to make a throw. And I think Sam has the ability. Like you said, he's playing very good football. He's got a great skill set when it comes to his arm talent, his accuracy, all the things, right? Like you said, if you look at just kind of, if you take away his sacks and you take away the Buffalo game, he's like the 10th best quarterback in the NFL. Like it's crazy. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So, but you can't do that. And in those games, like some of the things he had a hard time with, even against Buffalo, were like simulated pressures. Just not understanding where the man side of the protection is or not changing the protection. So Wink's going to definitely test that early and often. And I think he's going to pressure him a ton. Like I think Wink's pressuring around 41-2% of the time. I would expect it to be close to 50 or 60% today. Like he is going to let him have it. And what's the solution if you're EB, if you're Sam? And an easy way to get teams to stop pressuring you is to show you, is to burn them a couple times. Be like, you're going to bring a pressure, ball's out. I know what my answer is. I know where the protection's going. I know where we're strong. I know where they're weak. Let's get the ball out. And can Sam do that? I think is really the question. And I cannot say definitively yes or no. So if I'm EB, again, and I'm a conservative play caller. I'm learning this about myself doing the high school thing. Like I want to be a little bit more conservative. I think I'm gonna.
You and EB do not have that in common.
No, we don't. And I think I understand EB's perspective, and I think it's good. I think it's the right perspective. I think you want to be aggressive, but if this is an issue that's going to be persisting in the offense, and I think looking back at Atlanta last week, a couple of those come in 2-minute situations. The stuff against the Bears, they're down big. Like there's a little bit of game flow and game context that goes into that. But I'm going to try, especially against a team in New York that doesn't stop the run very well. I want to run the ball a little bit more. I'm not saying run every first down or run pass. I'm not saying that. I'm saying I'm just trying to find a higher frequency of running the football, just slightly higher, you know?
Yeah, no, 100%. So I think you have a high school team that you actually call plays for. EB is a NFL play caller.
Yeah.
I play Madden.
That's the same thing.
And so that's my play calling experience. I am much more of the EB, like, let's be aggressive. I might accidentally at times throw the ball too many times in a row.
Yeah.
But I do think, like,
well, there's nothing wrong with that. I want to make sure that that's clear. There's nothing wrong with that.
Sure. Well, what I was going to say is two things. One, I personally like to aggressively look to run the football. Like, when presented with an option, I will take the free yards.
Yeah.
Like, you give me a wide open, middle field open situation, okay, cool.
Yeah.
I will take the 7-yard run all day, every day.
Yep.
And I don't necessarily think that even philosophically EB is there. Like, I don't know that Sam is empowered to be like, okay, we have a middle field open. Let's just go ahead and check to a run and get this.
I think that's a great point.
So that's part of it. But I also think that this is where complementary football comes in. And if you are playing a team in the New York Giants today, if you're Eric Bieniemy and the Commanders, that offensively is going to struggle. As definitively as one could say that before the game starts, they should struggle offensively because they have not scored an offensive touchdown since week 3. The pressure for you to be explosive and put up points is not there as much.
Yeah.
And mitigating risk actually becomes more important in a lot of ways.
That's a great point.
Because that's how the Giants are going to stay in the game. So if I'm Bieniemy today, I have to kind of check myself and say, I know I want to be aggressive. I know this is how we're built. But running the football is much less likely to result in a turnover, in a pick, in something silly than even if, we get a holding penalty and get backed up. A drive that ends in a punt today is fine.
Do you think he's going to do that, though, would be my question to you.
I think a little bit more than usual, yes. I really do, because I think Rivera, and this is a credit to Ron, I think Rivera is going to be like, look, man, we gotta be smart today.
Yeah.
And we know what Wink is. Like, we had this problem last year. We're not doing that again. And also, the Giants are giving, and I realize they played the Niners, they played the Dolphins, they played the Seahawks, they played some of the best running teams in football, but they are giving up 5.1 yards a carry.
Yep.
So you should have opportunities. At the same time, though, they're going to play a lot of man behind some of these blitz looks.
Yep.
And you do have Jahan Dotson, who had a 100-yard game against them last year. You do have Terry McLaurin, who's had a couple 100-yard games. So I do think there will be opportunities. You just have to be smart about it.
Yeah.
Maybe some of those opportunities take big shots, come off of play action and boot and some half rolls, and you move the pocket a little bit. But I think it's really important that EB just doesn't get into hey, let's start dropping back, 5-step drop a lot. Because if the Giants pass rush and Wink as a play caller gets into a rhythm, that's, I think, where they get in trouble.
Yeah, and I think you hit another kind of like subtle point there is like if you can stay in second and manageable, third, like that changes the complexion of this pretty dramatically as well. So if you're moving efficiently, you've got a 5-yard run, you run a boot, you get a first down. That is another way to protect the quarterback and insulate them through kind of, again, just managing the context of when and where Wink wants to pressure and what he's going to be bringing pressures to. So I think there's something to that, 100%. But yeah, I don't know. I just don't know if EB's going to do that. And I understand like the perspective he's going to bring. He's like, man, they're going to be in man coverage. Let's take advantage of that. We like our matchups on the outside. And Sam, you just got to make some throws. And I can see him attacking this game with that approach. And there's nothing inherently wrong with it. But I would say the one thing I would kind of just call attention to is that, yes, there's nothing inherently wrong with that game plan. However, Sam Howell is on like a historic rate of turning pressures into sacks, and this team's going to create pressures just through blitzing. So that has to be in a consideration somewhere. And I think as a coordinator, sometimes you forget that a little bit. You forget like what you're bad at. You're like, this should be good. This will be good,
right? And
it is good. It's there on
it's also, I think, for a guy that's as aggressive as EB is like, oh, blitz opportunity. Let's hit the screen. Let's hit the thing. They're going to be weak here. And it's like, you don't have to, especially in this game, because of where the Giants are offensively, you don't have to score now.
Yeah.
Just be patient. Be willing to take the 6-yard run, the 5-yard sit route, the whatever, live to see another down. And more opportunities for shots will present themselves.
No, I agree. And I think possess the football, like just play complementary football. And I know that's kind of boring. And I don't think that's who EB wants to be. I don't think that's who EB is. So I'm just curious to see if he does that. But I do think there is something there. Like, run the football. Like, be more deliberate about running the football. It's okay to go 6 and out, 5 and out. It's okay to do that.
Yeah. Try not to go 3 and out, but like 5, 6 and out, you get a little bit of field position. Like, you back up the Giants a couple of times in their own end. Like, that's going to go well for you.
And I think we're talking about this like the defense has been playing well, and they really haven't been. I mean, I think they played well against Atlanta, so maybe there is a little it'd be interesting to hear the conversations in the building about what they feel they can get away with offensively. Because, you know, when your defense is playing well, you can do a little bit more of like what we're describing. It's okay to punt. It's okay to like lean into this stuff. I think the defense should be fine today. But you never know what that conversation, that dialogue looks like in the building, and what offensively they're thinking, what defensively they think they can get away with. Like we said, defensively they should be able to kind of run away with this, but maybe that's not the conversation they're having.
Maybe. I mean, I do think that outside of the Chicago game, some of the defensive problems that we talked about were that the offense was putting them in terrible positions with frequency.
It's true.
So, you know, do you go back to that? If you're Del Rio, are you firing back at the enemy? It's like if you quit going 3 and out so much, then maybe we'd be a little bit better. What does Kevin Sheehan think about all of this? I don't know, but I will in probably about 10 minutes because he joins us next. I built in some time for a longer answer.
I got you.
He joins us in 4 minutes here on the Take Command Pregame Show, the Team 980, 106.7 The Fans, Burgundy and Gold Game Day.
But my favorite story is, I think we were playing Cincinnati. Was it Cincinnati?
That's not depends on the story, but maybe we were playing Cincinnati.
So Logan catches this touchdown.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that was Cincinnati. Yep.
It was Cincinnati. So we put in this play, and it was like, I think we called it Hoss Juke or something like that. I can't remember what we called it in that offense, but Logan's on a seam, right? So he's our vertical threat, taking the top off the defense.
Digging out, guys.
We're talking in the week. I don't think we ever said it in the install with those guys, but they're like, listen, Logan's not even in the progression. He's taking the top off this thing. We're trying to work this little option route down. And they bust this coverage. And I mean, he is screaming wide open.
I wasn't even supposed to be on the play. They were supposed to sub somebody else in because I thought I was too slow to run this route. Just for the context here for everybody.
So he's screaming wide open. And I'm like, Matt, throw it at his back shoulder. You might hit him in stride. If you try and back shoulder him. Threw it right at him. He catches it. It was an awesome touchdown. Just the celebration afterwards was so much fun. For me, it was always fun celebrating the touchdowns with the guys that didn't score them all the time. You know, like
take that, Julio Jones.
Yeah, and I'm not. You know, I'm saying that, but like your role for us was you did the dirty work, and when you see guys that do the dirty work get rewarded for it, that was really cool. Something I'll never forget. The caveman. And the caveman was in there in the end zone celebrating. It was awesome.
So there was this play where we call it like it was, what is it, 19 Zorro. So basically like versus a 3-4 structure with an outside linebacker who is Von Miller in this case, I would get help from the fullback, you know, like on inside help. So I could be really aggressive on my reach, really violent to the reach. And so it's me and DY, you know, is a physical son of a gun. And so we take Von Miller and we put him, like, no joke, in the water cooler. Like, we put him way out there on the sideline. And we were like, you know, this guy ain't nothing. Like, we're going to, you know, we were so fired up. And so it ended up being like a 25 or 30 yard gain. So we were all fired up. And then Kyle's like, all right, let's come back to it. So like 2 plays later, we're running again and we're running to the right. And I was like, oh man, we are about to tee this dude up real quick. Just tune him up nice and good. And so I go out to get him and I'm firing off the ball. My hat's low. I'm flat back. And I swear to God, like he was about as close as my hand was to my face. And he just disappeared into like mist. And he like swung me and I fell right on my face. And I just was like, oh my gosh. And like I went back and watched the film and it was crazy how quickly he was able to like do his little basketball weave and then like just disappear from my vision and get inside and make the tackle. And I was like, oh, so now he's upset. So then the next play, I'm like all tentative and nervous. And I felt like Vaughn did. I watched this on film, so I knew he did this. But he does a really good job of like kind of like playing it like a boxer a little bit. You know what I mean? Like kind of rope-a-doping you a little bit. So like he lets you get one, right? Where I got after him. He makes you look like an idiot. And then the next time I was super tentative on him, and he literally did like a double stick like he was going to make me miss, and then just grabbed my neck and then threw me over the pile. I was like, man, this is going to be tough. I got to like think of a plan here in the next 15 minutes so I don't look like an idiot for the rest of the game. But, when you're playing elite football players like him, like there's a reason they're elite. So if you get one on them, it's probably because they want. They probably because they're letting you get one.
It's a trap. It's a trap.
It's a trap.
Welcome back. It is the Take Command Pregame Show live at TAP Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor. You can come join us in person in 30 minutes when the doors open, 11 o'clock, 27 minutes in person. Bartenders ready. Got a Jahan Dotson jersey over there. Love that. So we got a full room of chairs waiting for your butts to sit in them here at TAP Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor. Put that in an ad campaign. Kevin Sheehan joins us now as he does 30 minutes into the show every single week. Sheehan, good morning, sir.
What's up, guys? How we doing?
Doing well. Excited for this game today. Lots and lots of questions. I would love to pick up the conversation with you where we were before the break, which is how we think Eric Bieniemy approaches this game. We know that, he's an aggressive play caller, not very run heavy. In fact, he's got the heaviest pass skew in the league for most of the year. But against the Giants team that is super blitz heavy, wants to put pressure on your quarterback, and has an offense that's not very good, Logan and I kind of sit in a more conservative seat in terms of what we would like to see from the game flow. Where do you sit personally? And two, what do you think Bieniemy does today in terms of the play calling?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I was talking with Craig about this in the break, and we talked about it a little bit in the first segment. Is the spread is 3 points, you said, Craig?
Yeah, now we're up to 3.
And so obviously I think a lot of fans in the area think this game should be won by a bigger margin. Like, what's your thought on that spread, and, like, what's your thought on why it's so close? And so, yeah, you mentioned that, you mentioned that the defensive numbers for the Giants are not good. Where do you think this defense actually is? Because when you watch it, I mean, they do make some plays. I think they are productive. They are disruptive. What are your thoughts on that defense specifically?
Up that day. So, it's one of those situations where I think Chicago, when they came into that Thursday night game, had played their best game of the year and had lost to Denver, but had some confidence coming in. And the Giants have, a terrible record, but they just played the best game of the year. And maybe they're coming into this a little bit more confident. So this is not, I know our fan base tends to think that we should win games. I don't think there's a should win game on the schedule, but they should be the better team and the healthier team for sure.
Kevin Sheehan with us here on the Take Command Pregame Show. Craig Hoffman, Logan Paulsen with you here on 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980. So, Kevin, one more Commanders thing, and then love to get your thoughts on some other games around the league today, as we always do. Logan and I haven't talked about this yet, but we will later in the show. Emmanuel Forbes looked like he was going to have to play this week, and then it's like, no, Kendall Fuller's knee missing 2 days of practice was just a maintenance situation. But what do you make of how they are handling Forbes with this reset / benching, depending on how you want to phrase it, look at it, and ultimately where he goes from here as the number one pick that they used this year?
Not to go all Doc on you, but to me, it's so far down the list of interesting stories right now. They've got to make sure that the players active today and who are playing for them give them a chance to win the game. I would never declare anything about a player's career 7 games into his career. Don't we all know enough about NFL drafts to say it takes, 2 to 3 years minimum to evaluate it? He's got talent. He struggled a little bit, with technique, as they described, and other things. And I think last week against a big physical football team on offense, it was probably the right week not to have him out there, especially when they needed to tackle well. Today's going to be, one of those games, although the Giants just don't have the pass catchers that Atlanta has. But I just think it's down the list right now. He's a young player, He'll either figure it out or he won't. They're going to have to coach him up. It may be a completely different group, as we all understand, by the time we get to January and in February, that will be coaching him up. But he had a lot of talent. It wasn't like this player wasn't going to be picked in the first round. Christian Gonzalez probably all along was going to be picked before him, but it's just too early for me to feel much one way or the other about him, other than just to hope it works out.
All right, Kevin Sheehan with us. Kevin Sheehan Show, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. each and every day on the Team 980. What other games do you like across the schedule this weekend? And was your Saturday this weekend better than your Saturday last weekend?
Oh, yeah. Yesterday was a really good day.
Love that.
Was
Bounce
an unbeaten
back.
Day. Yeah, but, you can give it all back a day later, like as in today. I've certainly taken those lumps over the years. I kind of like Baltimore today. I kind of like New England plus the points against Buffalo today. Buffalo's been interesting the last couple of weeks. They've actually struggled to score at times. In the London game, and then last week against the Giants. And New England is good defensively, talented defensively. And I like the Chargers today. Those are a couple of them that I like.
Okay. New England sounds crazy.
It does sound crazy.
Exactly.
Because they're terrible. But Buffalo has not been as good since, the London trip might have tripped them up. They also lost some key players. The one I wanted to ask you about, the Steelers line stinks to high heavens because they're awful. What do you think about that game today?
You think the Rams being favored by 3?
Yeah, like why aren't the Rams favored by more?
You're so funny. You're so dramatic over there.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's their, by the way, they don't get much credit for being a home team.
Right.
Although they get more credit for being a home team than the Chargers do at SoFi. Yeah, I mean, actually, I don't know. I don't think the line is that off.
Yeah,
Pittsburgh's
Craig.
very good defensively.
Thanks.
They're 3-2. Yeah, it could be a little bit higher. So you like the Rams, or do you like Pittsburgh as a contrarian?
Yeah, I like Pittsburgh as a contrarian. On our picks on Friday, I was just like, that line doesn't make enough sense to me. Don't ask me for actual analysis. I'm picking Pittsburgh. And then on Monday, Anthony, you're just going to be really mad at me when I'm right.
Yeah, you and I think alike as far as that's concerned. Yeah, I mean, I guess it could be a little bit higher, but not a lot higher, I don't think. But I'm with you a little bit. I kind of like Pittsburgh today because the Rams are also moving beyond just the minimal analysis that you and I just gave as to why we like Pittsburgh. The Rams are a little bit banged up too.
Yeah, they are. Kyron Williams on IR.
Yeah.
Man, I was on such a great fantasy thing. Speaking about things people care about, my fantasy football team decimated by injuries.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that's the analysis people are here for.
What do you got in the Commanders game today, Kevin? What's your pick there?
I mean, I just think it feels like a last possession game. I hope it isn't. I mean, last week, all they had to do was stop the run, and not turn the ball over, and it was going to be a winnable game. And I think it's almost the exact same thing today. And they just have to protect the football and not be afraid to punt. Jay Gruden said that to me on Friday. It's like, this is one of those games. It's not like the Giants are super explosive. So 3rd and 9, don't take, a 10-yard loss or don't put it up for grabs. But I got like 20-19 Washington. The Giants are going to have a chance.
Close.
Yeah, it feels like it's going to be that way. All right, Kevin will be talking about it tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. on the Team 980. Of course, always check out the Kevin Sheehan Show podcast as well. Sheehan, thank you for your time, sir, and we will talk to you next week.
Love doing it, guys. Thanks for having me.
Kevin Sheehan, everybody. When we get back, Eric Bieniemy had some interesting thoughts this week on how the Commanders' receivers can get going a little bit. Curious Logan's thoughts on EB's thoughts. We'll get them next. It is the Take Command Pregame Show on Burgundy and Gold Game Day.
To be of community. One thing when I talked to Fred about, and I think the other thing about knowing and doing your job is there needs to be a level of communication. Like that's one thing when I talked to Fred about when he played with Sean Taylor and LaRon and D'Angelo or whoever the other corner was. Like one of the things that they did a good job of is communicate those situations. It's like we're coming out of the huddle, we're walking the line of scrimmage, and Cam would go, hey. Or Smoot would go, hey, man, remember, I'm by myself here. Or Sean would be like, hey, you're by yourself. I got to help over here on the 3-by. And that stuff is so powerful. And it takes ownership of a whole group to get there. So there are layers to this. There are things that can be done differently. And I don't think we're trying to assign blame here. We're kind of reasons and like with an onion, right? You pull back the first layer. People say, oh, St. Juice is playing bad. And it's like, well, he's playing hard, but is he playing bad because he doesn't know what to do or whatever it is? There's a level here. And I think
the way I've phrased it for the last week is like we're on a quest for answers. But what do you see defensively from Atlanta? It was, I think, a bit of a different look than anything Washington's seen this year.
Yes, this was a really interesting film study because you're watching the film and you're like, I know this defense. Like, I know it. I can't pinpoint exactly. Like, the coverages aren't the same. And then I was like, what's going on here? So I looked it up, and the defensive coordinator was the D-line coach in New Orleans. And when I read that, I was like, oh, that makes 100% sense. Like, they play a New Orleans style of football, a New Orleans defensive style of football. And what I mean by that is they are fast and they are physical. They're not overly complicated. They don't bring a ton of pressure, but they're good at what they do.
What is it about the Division games that it doesn't seem to matter where the two teams are in their season?
I think it's a little bit of everything. I think you get a really good feel for what your opponent's doing, like physically. What are the points of contention or nervousness going into a game is like, what does this guy do physically? How does he move? Obviously, you can study film, but there's a different opportunity to kind of run a route on a guy and put your hands on somebody and kind of know what they like to do to shed and kind of get a feel for it. And so as you get to know them better and they get to know you, you kind of start playing that advanced like chess metric. And I think the familiarity breeds like a faster game quality, because like I know exactly what this defense is. I know exactly how they're going to play this run. We ran it against them 6 weeks ago. Let's see it again. And we ran it against them last year twice. You know what I'm saying? So you get a really good feel for that. And obviously, like, the fans in the stadium are just a little bit more up. And so I definitely think the divisional thing is real. And you talk about it differently. You talk about divisional games in the week in a different way. So it's definitely something that's 100% real. And, in the context of the Giants, like, for whatever reason, they just have a good feel for this team. They have a good feel, good opportunity. Like, in our Take Fives, we talked about some Giant stories. Like I felt like during early in my playing career, I had a really good feel for what the Giants were doing. Like, I don't know what it was. When I went in that game, I just felt like I knew them really well. And sometimes when the Giants play the Commanders, it's like they just have a good knack and feel for kind of the holes and the wrinkles in the defense and ways to scheme stuff open. So I think divisional games are so fun. They're so fun to watch. They're so fun to play in. And I think they're fun to talk about because, like you said, even in this game where, we're going to talk about the Giants here in a second, Giants aren't a very good football team at the moment. Like, I don't know. And like Santana Moss is one of my favorite things he does. He's very consistent with his points of analysis. And anytime we're playing a divisional game, he's like, you can't count the other.
Take Command Pregame Show on 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980. I'm Craig Hoffman. He is Logan Paulsen. We're also streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980 and at 106.7 The Fan. It's time for our Coach Speak segment where we take a listen to something that typically Ron Rivera says, but I liked something that Eric Bieniemy said this week that I thought was interesting, and we try to read between the lines a little bit, see if we can translate the Coach Speak into something more productive in terms of a conversation versus the platitudes and things that coaches typically speak in. But the thing about EB this week, while he wasn't specific in who he was talking about, he did give some, I think, insight into how his wide receivers can get going a little bit more and more consistently. And I happen to think that this is kind of the thing that can unlock Jahan Dotson to the level that we thought he would produce at this year. So, Chris, let's go ahead and hit that bite from EB.
You know what? There's a lot that needs to take place. And obviously, Coach Bobby does a great job of working with those guys throughout the course of the week. Obviously, Bobby played a long time. So his knowledge and wisdom and expertise in that area is one to look up to. But you have to have a plan versus man coverage. And what am I talking about when having a plan? You got to understand exactly what type of technique they're playing. Then you got to make sure that you're working on releasing at the line of scrimmage. You got to win at the line of scrimmage. On top of that, now you got to win at the second level. Because regardless of penalties being called or not called, guys are going to grab. They're going to do that. That's a part of the game. So we got to have a plan at the line of scrimmage. All right. Then we got to execute that plan. But then we got to have a plan at the second level on how we're going to escape and release to the appropriate depth in the route that we're running. So you always got to work on that. And the thing about it, we have to play with speed. So what other better way to beat man coverage? You got to play with great speed, okay? But you got to be violent with your hands as well. Hand-to-hand combat.
So when he talks about playing with speed, Jahan Dotson has plenty of speed. He's 4.3 fast. But there have been times, I think, when we've watched the tape that he has been not necessarily in the speed of the play.
Sure.
Where are you uncovering at the right time versus zone, or do you win fast enough against man? Sure, if you, like, you've seen the viral videos of guys playing, like, walking football.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Jahan Dotson would kill people at that game. He's got so much short area shake. But can you in a game where your quarterback is under pressure, win fast and win now so that he sees you open and is able to have confidence to deliver the football, and that he knows you're going to be where you're supposed to be. And so when you talk about winning off the line of scrimmage definitively, winning at the second level, and playing with speed, you look at the success that Curtis Samuel and Terry McLaurin have had, veteran receivers who understand that because they've played. Jahan Dotson's got all the tools. Seems like he's lagging behind a little bit. To me, EB is talking about his young receiver there. Not that Jahan's playing terrible football, but he certainly hasn't taken the step that I think a lot of us thought he would coming into this season.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting kind of compilation of things, and all of those things I think apply to Jahan. And the reason I'm going to say that is I think there are times where you watch him, and this is something I think we've talked about maybe off air a little bit, is where he doesn't have some of the best receivers I played with, like Pierre, I'm going to put in there, Julio, Hop. It's like low-key a fist fight at the line of scrimmage. And I feel like sometimes Jahan doesn't have the right kind of physical mindset in some of those situations to be like, I'm going to violently use my hands. He's going to get his hands on me. I'm going to violently shoulder through this and run. And it's going to be messy and not the cleanest of all time. But I'm going to fight my tail off to get in the right position at the top of this route and the timing of the play to make a play. And again, like Hop is probably the best at this of the guys that I played with because, Julio's fast. He's big.
DeAndre Hopkins, for those that forgot that Logan played with DeAndre Hopkins. That's what we're talking about.
And so, there's times where he's getting pressed, and it's like, and it literally is gross. Like if you had that in a one-on-one, you'd be like, that DB probably wins that rep. Like if just totally isolated. But he would just fight for position, fight for leverage, re-stem stuff, get out, make a tough catch. And I feel like there's times where I watch Jahan Dotson, and I don't see that level of just like grind it out, grit, toughness. I don't want to call a guy not tough because I think he's plenty tough. I think he has this to his game.
There's a difference between being tough mentally, like having it in you, and deploying it.
Right, and I think that's kind of where I'm at with him sometimes. It's like you're getting pressed. Like this is not going to be easy. They're not going to let you just like walk off the ball here. This is the NFL, and that's something. So like having a plan at the line of scrimmage, I think that's part of it, right? Like understanding leverages, understanding where his help is. That's something near the end of my career I wish I would have known earlier in my career. Is just based on how he's pressing you, he's trying to funnel you to help. And so I'm trying to beat this guy in front of me, but I'm also trying to stay away from his help. So what's my plan? What's the best way to get that done? I think that's incredibly important. Win at the line of scrimmage, we just talked about that. Win at the second level is something, again, I think it's just the same. It's the same as winning at the line of scrimmage, but it's at the second level. So like you see this with Terry, you see this with Curtis quite a bit. And one of the reasons I think Curtis has been very successful is guys are hanging on him, they're grabbing him, and he is violently ripping out of stuff.
Yes.
He's violently ripping out of that pull, and there's times where I feel like
seconds.
Jahan doesn't have that strength or that power to get that done. So all those things I think apply to Jahan, and I think they're all areas that he can improve on, and I think he will and he can improve on, but it's just going to take some mentorship from the receiver coach and mentorship from EB and the other guys in the room, quite honestly. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think, too, when you look at Terry,
10 seconds.
he is the guy that has these real heavy hands.
Yeah.
And, like, if you go to training camp, you can hear the heavy hands as well.
Yeah.
And then, I think about it on the other side of the ball as well with Emmanuel Forbes. Like, I don't think understands that necessarily from the DB side of things as well yet, where, like, you might get thrown at the second level, and that's happened to him sometimes. So I think that's all really good stuff from EB. He's obviously not singling out Jahan, but we know that if Jahan can get better at those things, that he's going to maybe take that step to be the receiver that we thought he would be before, based off what he did as a rookie last year.
Yeah, and I know we got to go to a break soon, but I think that applies to Terry. There's times where Terry's getting pulled and held, and he kind of is like getting up, like looking for a flag. Never expect a flag. Never expect a flag. Fight through that contact like you're going to get the football. And I think I go back to Julio. Like Julio, people would be so scared. They'd be grabbing on him like his jersey would be ripped up. And when that ball's in the air, like Tony Gonzalez came and talked to me when I was in college. Our tight end coach coached him in Kansas City.
Okay.
And the thing he said is like when that football is in the air, like that is your family's livelihood. Do everything. I'm not relying on a PI to bail me out. I am getting to the football. And I thought that sense of urgency is the thing that I've seen with, like, I talk about Pierre. Pierre is one of those guys that is like a wild man when it comes to that. And he attacked the football that way. Like it was your livelihood. And it does take a little bit more oomph to get that done. And I think that's something that, again, like if you're being critical, if you're looking at yourself and saying, what can I do better? Like there's always something every game, but I think that a lot of these things apply to the whole receiver group, Not that they're playing poorly, but again, it's a mindset, a toughness thing that I think could be better and help the quarterback out.
For sure. All right, we get back. The Sports Junkies join us for their take on the game. We'll take a deeper dive into some of the tape next hour as well around the NFL and the inactive list coming up at 11:30. There are some questionable guys for the New York Giants, including more offensive linemen. Are they playing? We'll figure that out at 11:30. It's the Take Command Pregame Show live from Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor, where the doors are about to open. You can come join us in person. Of course, you can also keep listening or watching wherever you are right now. YouTube, the free Odyssey app, or on your radio, 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980.
All right, you're out.
You should.
Depends on the story, but maybe we were playing Cincinnati.
So Logan catches this touchdown.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that was Cincinnati. Yep.
With Cincinnati. So we put in this play, and it was like, I think we called it Hoss Juke or something like that. I can't remember what we called it in that offense, but Logan's on a seam, right? So he's our vertical threat, taking the top off the defense.
Digging out, guys.
We're talking in the week. I don't think we ever said it in the install with those guys, but they're like, listen, Logan's not even in the progression. He's taking the top off this thing. We're trying to work this little option route down. And they bust this coverage. And I mean, he is screaming wide open.
I wasn't even supposed to be on the play. They were supposed to sub somebody else in because I thought I was too slow to run this route. Just for the context here for everybody.
So he's screaming wide open. And I'm like, Matt, throw it at his back shoulder. You might hit him in stride. If you try and back shoulder him. Threw it right at him. He catches it. It was an awesome touchdown. Just the celebration afterwards was so much fun. For me, it was always fun celebrating the touchdowns with the guys that didn't score them all the time. You know, like
take that, Julio Jones.
Yeah, and I'm not, I'm saying that, but like your role for us was you did the dirty work, and when you see guys that do the dirty work get rewarded for it, that was really cool. Something I'll never forget. The caveman. Yeah. And the caveman was in there in the end zone celebrating. It was awesome.
So there was this play where we call it like it was, 19 Zorro. So basically like versus a 3-4 structure with an outside linebacker who is Von Miller in this case, I would get help from the fullback, like on inside help. So I could be really aggressive on my reach, really violent to the reach. And so it was me and DY, is a physical son of a gun. And so we take Von Miller and we put him, like, no joke, in the water cooler. Like, we put him way out there on the sideline. And we were like, this guy ain't nothing. Like, we're going to, we were so fired up. And so it ended up being like a 25 or 30-yard gain. So we were all fired up. And then Kyle's like, all right, let's come back to it. So, like, 2 plays later, we're running again, and we're running to the right. And I was like, oh, man, we are about to tee this dude up real quick. Just tune him up nice and good. And so I go out to get him, and I'm firing off the ball. My hat's low. I'm flat back. And I swear to God, like, he was about as close as my hand was to my face, and he just disappeared into, like, mist. And he, like, swung me, and I fell right on my face. And I just was like, oh, my gosh. And, like, I went back and watched the film, and it was crazy how quickly he was able to, like, do his little basketball weave and then, like just disappear from my vision and get inside and make the tackle. And I was like, oh, so now he's upset. So then the next play, I'm like all tentative and nervous. And I felt like Vaughn did. I watched this on film, so I knew he did this. But he does a really good job of, like, kind of like playing it like a boxer a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, kind of rope-a-doping you a little bit. So, like, he lets you get one, right? Where I got after him. He makes you look like an idiot. And then the next time I was super tentative on him, and he literally did like a double stick, like he was going to make me miss, and then just grabbed my neck and then threw me over the pile. I was like, man, this is going to be tough. I got to, like, think of a plan here in the next 15 minutes so I don't look like an idiot for the rest of the game. But, when you're playing elite football players like him, like, there's a reason they're elite. So if you get one on them, it's probably because they want. They probably because they're letting you get one.
It's a trap. It's a trap.
It's a trap.
Take Command Pregame Show live from Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor, where the doors are now open. You can come hang out with us in person. Great food, great drinks, great times, great amount of televisions to watch football later today. If you want to mosey on over and then stay put for the 1 o'clock games, obviously the Commanders will be on the big screen, which is actually a lot of smaller screens behind us. Those individual screens are not that small either, though.
I know. It's a big TV.
Do we know how big each of these individual screens are?
Are you going to try and do math? That's like a 20-foot TV.
Yeah. I'd say
30-inch screens, and then there's 16 of them. So I'm not going to try to do that math, but that's how big the TV is. So the Commanders will be on up there. You got all the games all around in the 1 o'clock window, and there's some good ones. We'll go over them in half an hour ourselves. Right now, though, time for the Sports Junkies' thoughts on the game. So we will send it to those guys for their thoughts on Commanders and Giants.
All right, boys. The sky.
All right, you're out.
When the Commanders lost to the Bears, but they bounced back last week with the win against the Falcons, and now another winnable game on the board in New York against the Giants. Jason.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Giants have been porous offensively. They've scored 71 points in 6 games. Now, they've played a tough schedule. The 5 losses are against teams that all have winning records and right now are all probably going to the playoffs. But look, I know it's the Giants' divisional game, but, man, the Giants are so banged up. This is a game that you kind of have to win. If Washington thinks that they're in the mix for a wild card spot, this is one of those opponents that you have to beat. We said that about the Bears. I get it. We said it kind of about the Falcons. That was a good road win. You have to beat a team that's 1-5.
It doesn't worry you that the Bills game was a tight game, which the Giants could have won. It doesn't worry you that the Giants beat them last year. They had a tie. So it was 1 win, 1 tie last year, 2 close games against the Giants last season.
Look, it would worry me. It's the Giants. I mean, the Giants historically have been really good against this team, especially with Daniel Jones. But is Daniel Jones going to play? I don't know. Unless Barkley goes nuts, I just can't imagine them scoring a bunch of points with how bad the offensive line is and how banged up they are.
I actually think when you look at it, they're very scary 1-5 team or whatever the heck they are. I mean, their last 4 losses to the Niners, Seahawks, Dolphins, Bills.
Yeah, Jason mentioned they're all playoff teams.
All good teams. Mm-hmm. So, be careful what you wish for. I do think in a lot of ways it's a must-win game, especially after that devastating loss to Chicago. I do think also at the end of the day that we're a slightly better football team than they are. So I think that we should win. They're terrible defensively. They're terrible offensively.
I don't know that they're terrible defensively. I know they've had some games where they've been terrible, and against the run they're bad, but their defense is better than the Commanders. Just look at the stats.
Okay, we're not good. But I think they're right there with us defensively.
Yeah, they're not great.
And they're last in the league in sacks.
Yeah.
But that doesn't matter really against Washington.
They're banged up. It's really a must-win game. I mean, they're fighting, for respectability. We're, in theory, fighting for a playoff spot. So I just don't think they can afford to lose this game. They've already gone out and been embarrassed just 2 weeks ago. I don't think they could afford to be embarrassed again today. I expect a huge effort. I expect Brian Robinson to have a big day. I expect Chase Young to have a big day. Montez to have a big day.
They'll have that opportunity against a banged-up offensive line. I'm just telling you, I watched the Giants-Bills game. Giants could have won that game. We saw the Bills manhandle the Commanders, win easily with 9 sacks in the game. And they didn't have 9 sacks against the New York Giants, who have this banged-up offensive line that everybody's saying is garbage. When Saquon Barkley is back, we had Paul Dottino on the Sports Junkie show on Friday. He's a beat reporter who covers the Giants, and he says they're a totally different team with Saquon Barkley back there. And I know that last year, it's not like Barkley ran for 250 yards and had 5 touchdowns against Washington, but they competed against the Buffalo Bills. That's what I last saw. I'm going to go Giants 20.
You got 30 seconds.
Game. And you know what? Watch out for the weather and the wind and the kicking game on Sunday.
20-19 Commanders.
I'm going to take us in a fairly convincing win, 27-17. But whatever happens, this is a huge, when you talk about a yardstick game or whatever, this is going to tell you.
Measuring stick?
This is a measuring stick game. Are they a good team, or are they just a flat-out bad team?
We'll find out on Sunday at 1 o'clock. Back to you, boys.
All right, thank you very much, JP. There's a stat they mentioned in there that I think is interesting. We talked about this a little bit earlier to an extent, but the Giants are the worst in the league at sacking the quarterback.
Yeah.
You know who was the worst before last week?
No.
The Falcons.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
They had 5 all season going into the game.
Yeah.
And then they had
Not
5
great.
in the game.
Yep.
The Giants, I think, also now have 5 all season coming into this game. How do you make sure that they don't leave with 5 more?
Yeah, I mean we talked about that at the top of the show too. It's a comprehensive thing. It's because when you look at the pass protection from the offensive line specifically, like it's been pretty good. I think they're the 8th now. They're the 8th graded offensive line from a pass protection standpoint in the NFL.
Yeah.
And obviously they have I'd say their Achilles heel as a pass protecting group is that they occasionally lose quickly, and those turn into sacks at a higher rate than other teams, right? Quick losses. But also I think Sam is holding the football a lot. So, we've talked about this on the podcast. Like there's a myriad of things you can do to help manage that. One, I think it's probably maybe the most important thing for Sam and EB is like prepping him in the week, making sure he's very clear about what to expect from the defense, where the ball should go, and if the first read is dead, where the ball needs to go, get the ball out of his hand, trust the clock in his head. That's all really important. Making sure the concept has answers and levels to it, I think that's also very, very important. So I think there's a myriad of things that can be done. Another thing is game flow. We've talked about that a lot. Making sure that the protection plan is sound and clear is another thing that's really important. So I think there's a lot of things that can be done, but, what are we in week 7 now?
Yeah.
And there hasn't been a big change week to week with regards to some of that stuff. So
there hasn't. I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this so it doesn't come off like a hot take. But like sacks can also be a little overrated. And I'll say that the example I'll use is who would you have rather been last week? Sam Howell sacked 5 times or Desmond Ridder sacked 3?
Yeah.
Because there are times where Ridder is like, oh God, pressure here, someone take it.
Right.
And like literally just let me uncork one, and it winds up in the arms of Benjamin St. Juste, floaty ball in the end zone.
Sure.
Or balls are up for grabs. And I think generally speaking, Sam Howell hasn't done that. There haven't been a lot of times. There's been a couple he's gotten away with. Of course, every quarterback does that. But at the end of the day, like sacks are better than turnovers. And Sam has figured out, I think, at times how to take a sack and just be like, you know what? All right, this is going poorly. Let me turtle up and go down.
Right.
I think the next step in his progression, obviously, maximal, find somewhere to go with the football that's good and open and deliver an accurate ball. Next thing that he can get to as well is he's got to figure out how to escape the pocket or move within the pocket.
Yeah,
I mean, both of those things.
Move within the pocket, I'd say.
Yeah, but I think he's got to do both. Like there are times where moving within the pocket is going to buy you that extra time to get the ball off. But he is a good runner, and like sometimes I think he goes to run and doesn't realize that he's actually running himself into sacks.
Yeah.
So how does he figure out now that after week 1 against Arizona, where he went to loop out the back of the pocket and got the sack fumble? How can he find a way to escape the pocket, I think, is a really important thing. I don't know the answer to that necessarily, but both the movement within and to get out of the pocket could definitely help him avoid some of these sacks. But all of that is better than just let me get rid of the ball to nowhere without intention just to get rid of it, and you see some of the problems that causes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you bring up a great point. Like, you don't want him throwing picks, and I think he has done a good job of not doing that. But I also don't want him taking sacks at some point, right? I think that needs to get better.
There are levels to this.
Yeah, there are levels, and there is nuance, and I agree, high level with what you're talking about. But I would like them to change the approach. If you keep doing the same thing over and over again and getting the same result, I think there needs to be kind of some critical thinking about what we're doing to maybe manage this. And again, like I think when you look at the Atlanta game, that game is really interesting because I thought they didn't manage first and second down very well. So you're in third and long situations frequently, and you're putting Sam in situations where he's got to kind of make these hero plays to extend drives. He's able to do that in the first half, not able to do it in the second half. Can we be better on first, second down? Can we be better in terms of concept allocation on third and medium? And obviously you can, because the more of your playbook's open to you, right? So that's something that I think I'd like to see here is just managing first, second down a little bit better. We've talked about B-Rob and getting him the ball more. Maybe it's Chris Rodriguez. Maybe it's Gibson, whoever it is. Can we be more efficient in those situations? I think there's an element of running the ball more efficiently, or blocking more efficiently, but also running the ball more efficiently in terms of timing. But like we've talked about ad nauseum, that's not the only way to kind of manage the offense in terms of down and distance. Like quick game, which is not a huge feature of this offense. It tends to be that kind of 5-step intermediate stuff.
It seems to be like in the first 15, and then they just forget that you can go back to it.
It's so interesting.
And actually, tell you what, let's do this.
Yeah.
Tail of the tape is next.
Okay.
Let's dive into some of that quick game stuff
Okay.
and talk about how they get to it early, how they can continue to get to it late, and how it can help that first and second down efficiency and maybe avoid some of the sacks with Sam Howell. We'll do that next, then we'll go around the NFL at 11:30. It is the Take Command Pregame Show live from TAP Sports Bar at MGM National Harbor on a Burgundy and Gold game day.
We have a new submission to the Real Things Hall of Fame. The F-35 is a fighter jet that the military has. It is very expensive. Very expensive. The F-35 program costs the U.S. government / the military over $1 trillion. Like, this is one of the most expensive things in the U.S. government's budget is the program that makes these planes. Each one is incredibly valuable and expensive. And something happened during a training mission, but this jet leaves, they go on a training mission, and it's in stealth mode, apparently, and the pilot has to eject. So the pilot's like, I'm up out of here. Pilot lands relatively safely, has, I think, an injury or two that has to be tended to, but, is alive. But then they lost the jet. So the jet disappeared from the radar. The U.S. government's like, well, we don't know where the jet is. And so the Buford, which is the suburb not suburb, it's in South Carolina. It's by Charleston. Close enough. If people are actually from there and don't want to say that and want to say it's by Hilton Head, I know I grew up in the state. Leave my geography alone for the sake of the story, which I've now made less efficient by telling you all of those things because I can't help myself. Talk about a plane crash. Hey, we're back. So the F-35 gets essentially lost, and they're like, I don't know where this very expensive warplane went. And lo and behold, sometime the next day or later that day, it crashes somewhere, and luckily no one's hurt. But this $100 million plane is gone. Whoopsies, we crashed the plane. And this is an eyewitness account from a Charleston area television station of someone who heard the crash.
In the bathroom taking a shave, and I heard a screeching, saw that between a screech and a whistle. I said, what in the world is this? And I heard a boom, and my whole house shook.
White says he didn't realize it was a plane at the time, so he didn't call anybody.
The first thought came to me, I said, what's it, a meteorite coming out of space or something? And I said, well, if the airplane, it needed to be reported, but the thing was flying is too low.
The F-35B airplane wreckage created an extensive debris field.
That voice, we gotta get a drop for the voice because it might be better than Steph Curry's.
I was gonna say, I feel like we have to do a comparison. Can I pull this off with? Yeah, okay. So I had to compare or see if I had enough channels on the board to do this. But we got Steph Curry here. We got Charlie Brown here. And we got our mans here.
His is better, though.
I think his is the best one. His is definitely, it's not quite Charlie Brown. It's definitely close to Steph Curry, though.
Yes.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Take Command Pregame Show live from Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor. Craig Hoffman, Logan Paulsen, and, well, you know it's a party now because although we don't have a microphone for him, he's just wandering around. Doc Walker's here.
He's here for the Commanders thing, right?
Yeah, he's here for the Commanders rally that takes place every road game here at Tap Sports Bar. So, you know, you want to come hang out with us, that's cool, but Doc Walker's here. So,
that's really cool.
That's really cool. So, Logan, time for Tail of the Tape. We'll go around the NFL coming up at 11:30. Also give you the Commanders inactive list. Is Emmanuel Forbes going to be inactive? There's a real case for it. So we'll get to that coming up over the back half hour of this hour. But when you look at the Commanders offense, they have been able to get some success in the quick game this year. And it feels like when quick game goes, it just feels like it's stealing. It feels like it's automatic. You're like, oh, how do they ever miss? Just a quick boop over the ball, or quick, you hit a slant, you hit a sit route, you hit a quick stop, you hit whatever version of the snag routes, whatever those short versions of those routes are. They all seem to start with S. They're all about 5 yards. And when you get those, you avoid those third and longs. So how can the Commanders use that, get to it? Where have they found success, and then why do they seem to get away from it as the game goes?
That's a great question, and I think it kind of goes down because like you said this during the break. You're like, oh, they did run a lot of quick, and I was like, did they? And then I went back and watched like the first 2 drives real quick during the break, and it's like, yeah, they did. They ran stick, they ran a dragon concept. So dragon for me is slant flat. Some people probably call it something else. They run a lot of bow, which to me is kind of I would characterize as like a 5-step drop, but there is a quick game element to it because there's like a quick sit. You got to dig behind it, so like you kind of read that out. It's an easier concept. So yeah, they did do some stuff. And what I would say to me is there are things that, as a play caller, I've experienced this with Kyle, with Sean, that you just kind of default to. You're just like, oh, this is where I feel comfortable. This is a play that I really like. This is something that's in my mind a lot. And I do think that when you look at Kansas City, when you look at where EB's been for the last 10 years of his career, like the quick game is a part of it for sure, but it's not like the main thing.
It feels like their quick game in Kansas City was just like, we're going to call something out here, and then Travis, as in Travis Kelce, is going to like run somewhere in the middle. And if Mahomes doesn't like the other stuff, he'll just throw it to Kelce.
But even that's not like true quick game. That's like, a 5-step drop, and there's a little bit of an extension by Mahomes. And then obviously they have that great relationship, and you just find something over the middle of the field. So I think it's important to note that a quick game is not necessarily the depth of route. It's the timing of the quarterback's feet in relation to the concept. So you mentioned stick, which is, everybody runs it. Some people call it Zampese because I guess Ken Zampese's dad, Ernie invented the concept, which is crazy to think about it. But it's basically like if you've got a tight end and a wing, right, and then a receiver outside. The outside receiver is going to outside release. The wing's going to run a flat, and the tight end's going to run a 5-yard out that can sit versus zone. And that's stick. And the reason it's 5 yards is because the quarterback can take a 3-step drop with a no hitch and just on that back foot throw the ball out. And so there's literally no reading. And the whole idea is that as the flat widens versus zone, you're creating a window for the stick. And you just throw the ball to the stick. And 90% of defenses play that the same way. The middle linebacker has eyes to the quarterback. He can't rally to the out. So it's just an easy throw for 5 yards. That's ceiling. Obviously, you can't run it every time because teams get wise to it. But you have dragon, you have stick, you have like the bow, which is, again, kind of in that 5, maybe like a little bit of a redheaded stepchild of the quick game. But I think the main reason you kind of get away from it is because you can tell EB later in the Falcons game, for example, and I think he did a pretty good job of keeping with it in the Philly game. But you could just like, oh, I need a shot, I need a chunk, I need a run, and then you kind of are in these 2 buckets. One is chunks and one is runs. But there's this gray area in between where it's like we can run a sprint, we can run a keeper, we can run a quick game. And those are a little bit less attractive because there is a level of risk associated with them, because you're throwing the football. But, they are low leverage throws, I guess is what I would say.
And I think what's frustrating, too, is like when it was time to get back on track, what did they hit? They hit Terry on a shallow.
Yeah.
And like a shallow can kind of be a part of a quick game, but also tends to be a little bit longer developing. But it's ultimately an easy throw.
I think it was shallow cross, the concept they ran. Shallow cross, which again it's not in a true quick game, but it kind of falls in that, kind of bow.
It's in that gray area.
Yeah, that bow, mesh kind of stuff where it's easy throws underneath, trying to manipulate coverages horizontally, and it was great. I think that's a great example of maybe not a true quick game, but something that isn't really vertically based down the field, and you're trying to work the underneath coverage in a different way.
And I think that what's important about that is it gets the ball out of Sam's hands safely and quickly. Quickly or gray area quickly.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing it does is it gets the balls in the hands of the playmakers with some level of predictability that allows a Terry McLaurin to feel the game.
It's a higher percentage throw.
Right. But also, like, they know, I don't know if it's 90% of the time, but 70% of the time, 80% of the time, if they call shallow cross and Terry's the one running the actual shallow cross as opposed to the deeper stuff that's like the clearing out routes, Terry's going to get the ball.
Yeah.
And so that's an easy way to get Terry a touch. My question would also be, on top of the benefits of staying out of second and third and long, is how do they use that stuff to get a Jahan Dotson, who's struggling a little bit, into the game? Like, get him a touch to get him in the rhythm in the feel of the game. Do they use that to get Terry extra touches? If they want to get a guy like Diami, who is good with the ball in his hands, a touch without running him down the field vertically, can they use some of that stuff to get their playmakers the ball? And we talk about the distribution all the time, and it helps, one, because you can kind of not fully predetermine a touch like you can on a handoff or like a shovel pass, but you can, with a high level of predictability, know where the ball is going, and it probably is going to help you be more efficient, get some conversions, and get more plays ultimately to get the rest of the playmakers the ball.
Yeah, no, I think that's 1,000% correct. I think when you look at, like when I was with Kyle, like I remember that was a big part of what he wanted to do. And I reference Kyle all the time because I was with him for, over
most
half
of
of my career, right? When I was in San Fran and we had Brian Hoyer playing quarterback, it's like, what's the easiest way to get him just get him in the flow of the game. Just get him in the flow of the game. And he kind of talked the same way about some of the playmakers. It's like, oh, hey, running back, this is your favorite run. We kind of got it schemed up this way. Just make sure we feel good about it. Bang. Or, whoever the receiver is at the time, like, Pierre, we're going to get you on this comeback. It's going to be great. Got outside leverage, easy touch, pitch and catch. And there is an element of you want to kind of get guys settled in. Like, I remember as a player, one of the things that I'd always talk about is, like, I didn't feel like in it you have, like, nervous energy until you took, like, your first hit, until you caught your first ball, got tackled, or whatever it was, kind of something to get you going. And it can be hard to, like, manufacture that in a game, and I think that there is definitely some merit to what you're talking about in terms of just getting guys settled in, get that first contact, get their hands on the ball for the first time. And you don't want it to be like crazy high leverage. You don't want it to be like, hey, let's run a fade and you got to win.
You got to go up and get it.
And the guys, obviously, they're professionals that make those plays, but I do think there is a lot of merit to being like, hey, let's just settle in, nice easy catch, boom, and then we get into our normal game flow of what's going on. But to me, I think it's just I think that's important. I think the leverage on the quarterback's important. I also think just making sure you get back to it as a play caller, having someone even that just reminds them, hey man, just don't forget about this. Like, this is important, and that that's extremely.
I want to be the reminder coach. When you eventually decide this talking into microphone stuff is we've had enough of it. I want my headset to be one that calls plays.
Yeah.
Can you hire me?
Be the reminder guy
to be in the booth and be the reminder guy?
It's so funny. Like at the high school, I got a guy who is the reminder guy. I'm like, hey man, like just remind me on 2nd and 10 in high school we can run the ball again. You know what I mean? Like, because
Sheehan will be the clock manager guy.
Yes.
And then I will be the reminder guy.
Yeah.
Hey Logan, don't forget that you can do this.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks. I'll collect my check.
Shout out to Curtis, by the way, reminder guy.
Yeah. Curtis, the reminder guy. I would put that on my LinkedIn. That's what I would do. What job? Reminder guy.
Yeah.
All right. That is Tale of the Tape. A little bit of a dive into the All-22 that can teach us something about this week's game. If you want more film breakdown, make sure you join us on our midweek podcast. The Take Command podcast, the Wednesday edition, has a deep dive film review of the previous game. So obviously this Wednesday we'll review the Giants game, and you can listen to that if you want to still now. I mean, we're previewing the game that's about to happen. I'd probably just keep listening to this show, but if that's what you want, then be our guest. Take Command Pregame Show live here at Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor. Logan Paulsen there, Craig Hoffman here, and we go around the NFL next.
What is it about the league right now that it doesn't seem to matter where the two teams are in their season?
I think it's a little bit of everything. I think you get a really good feel for what your opponent's doing, like physically, what are the things, what are the points of contention or nervousness going into a game is like, what does this guy do physically? How does he move? Obviously you can study film, but there's a different opportunity to kind of run a route on a guy and put your hands on somebody and kind of know what they like to do to shed and kind of get a feel for it. And so as you get to know them better and they get to know you, you kind of start playing that advanced like chess metric. And I think the familiarity breeds like a faster game quality. Because like I know exactly what this defense is. I know exactly how they're going to play this run. We ran it against them, 6 weeks ago. Let's see it again. And we ran it against them last year twice. You know what I'm saying? So you get a really good feel for that. And obviously, like the fans in the stadium are just a little bit more up. And so I definitely think the divisional thing is real. And you talk about it differently. You talk about divisional games in the week in a different way. So it's definitely something that's 100% real. And in the context of the Giants, like for whatever reason, they just have a good feel for this team. They have a good feel, good opportunity. Like, in our Take Fives, we talked about some Giant stories. Like I felt like during early in my playing career, I had a really good feel for what the Giants were doing. Like, I don't know what it was. When I went in that game, I just felt like I knew them really well. And sometimes when the Giants play the Commanders, it's like they just have a good knack and feel for kind of the holes and the wrinkles in the defense and ways to scheme stuff open. So I think divisional games are so fun. They're so fun to watch. They're so fun to play in. And I think they're fun to talk about because, like you said, even in this game where, we're going to talk about the Giants here in a second, Giants aren't a very good football team at the moment. Like, I don't know. And like Santana Moss is this is one of my favorite things he does. He's very consistent with his points of analysis. And anytime we're playing a divisional game, he's like, you can't count the other team out. And I think that's 100% accurate. And so whatever the record is, however bad the Giants have played, like this team, the Commanders, need to come and like put their best foot forward and just say like, we are the better football team. We're the better roster and play like it. And I think ultimately that's what this game comes down to.
Take Command Pregame Show live from Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor. Craig Hoffman, Logan Paulsen with you. Of course, on 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980. You can always stream us on the audio live on the free Odyssey app, either station's stream, or on either station's YouTube page you can watch, which means if you're out running errands right now, go home. Don't flip on, whatever other pregame show might be on television. Just open up your smart TV, go to the YouTube app, and we'll be right there talking about this game all the way up until kickoff. Grant Paulsen joins us an hour from right now. Actually, I think Danny's joining us today. Danny Rouillet, which you never know what's going to happen when Danny's on the show.
Danny.
Last time he called in live from his son's soccer game, and his son's team gave up, I think, 5 goals in the 11 minutes that he was with us on the radio.
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy. I think the score was like 16-1 or 16-2.
It was not good.
And
it
it's
was a
like,
lot to a little.
I thought, for some reason, I thought his son was playing like, he was like 6-year-old youth soccer, and
no, he's older than
he's
that.
like travel soccer, pretty serious, long road trip for Danny. So Danny was not super.
It wasn't Danny's favorite day, but that's okay. We'll see. Hopefully, it can go better today for Danny, and of course, better for the Commanders in general, because I think that was before the Buffalo game. So
yeah, maybe
it's a sign of things to come.
Can't have Danny on anymore.
Yeah, maybe it's actually all Danny's fault. I'm sure Danny would actually believe that. Anyway, we'll get to the inactives from the Commanders in just a moment, but it's time now to go around the NFL, take a look at the rest of the games of the day, give you some thoughts, a couple reminders perhaps on some guys that are out fantasy-wise. In just the absolute grossest game of the day, Raiders and Bears. You mentioned your guy Brian Hoyer earlier.
Yeah, he's
starting today for the Raiders.
Oh, is he going to start?
Yeah,
because I know they were talking about O'Connell starting. So
at least the report earlier this week is that Hoyer was going to start.
Either way, backup quarterback starting for the Raiders, backup quarterback starting for the Bears, rookie quarterback Bajent is starting for the Bears, and rookie quarterbacks in the NFL tend not to do that great in their first start.
No,
so
Vegas favored by 2.5 on the road in Chicago.
Yeah, and not a lot of stuff going on there. Maybe the Devontae Adams thing.
Maybe? I mean, I guess are they just going to throw the ball 1,000 times to Devontae Adams to try to make him happy?
That's what he wants for sure.
I mean, is that such a bad idea?
Either way, we're talking about this game way too much.
That's also true. By the way, if the Raiders beat the lowly Bears, they're 4-3 on the year.
Whoa, good for them.
Which is crazy. Browns and Colts. Obviously, Anthony Richardson out for the rest of the year. That is a huge bummer. Browns should have Deshaun Watson today. He's got to survive a pregame warm-up, but is on track to play. Cleveland's defense is one of the best we've ever seen in league. I mean, I know the New Heights guys call the Kelsey brothers call these LeBron stats. It's like you shrink down a certain amount of time. Oh, it's the most whatever, but no team, I think, has ever given up fewer yards, I think it is, than the Browns through 5 games in league history.
They're playing awesome.
So they are really, really good against the Colts.
I think that team is, like we said this in the break, is maybe like a legit playoff contending team.
Yeah, if they can get their offense straightened out. Because even when Deshaun's been there, their offense hasn't been great, and they lost Chubb.
The last game he was healthy was the first time it looked like it was all coming together. Like all that big trade was finally paying off. So can they continue
if they
that
figure
trend?
it out, man? And that defense is nasty. So we'll see what happens there today. I think Anthony and I both picked the Colts on Friday because we thought Deshaun wasn't playing. But at least we did it together. So my head-to-head with him, it's not going to hurt me. Bills and Patriots. Buffalo favored by 7.5 at New England.
Doesn't seem like enough, does it?
It doesn't, which is why it'll probably wind up being a silly, close game. I mean, Buffalo has not been the same team since they lost Milano and a couple of their other guys in that London game.
They're banged up for sure.
Offensively, Josh Allen had the bad game against the Jets to open.
Yeah.
Went on a heater that included destroying Washington.
Correct.
And then all of a sudden, it's like, he's back to kind of
I think he's going to be back, though. I think he bounces back this week. I think that Patriots team is not great, and I think they win by more than 7.
I tend to agree with that.
This good game right here.
Yeah, Falcons-Bucks. NFC South sleeper, kind of I don't know whether it'll be a fun game. This feels like a Logan Paulsen football game.
I'm excited.
It's a bit of a rock fight.
Yeah, rock fight. I love it. I mean, I think the Falcons are going to try and run the football. You got Vita Vea for the Bucs, who's going to be in there kind of mixing it up, stopping the run. Kalijah Cansey, their first-round pick, is healthy again. Not great against stopping the run, but excellent in terms of rushing the passer. So lots of fun storylines there. Can Desmond Ridder get out of his own way? That's my other thought there.
Yeah.
Because if he can, I think the Falcons are a good football team. They're just sans a good quarterback.
I think we talked about how interesting at least it would be to do Atlanta radio. Like, look, I'm not the world's biggest Taylor Heineke fan. That is not a secret. But, for what they need him to do, you have to wonder if Ridder struggles again. Like, if you're Arthur Smith, you go, hey, we got to go to Heineke because he's not going to do some of the silly stuff that Ridder does.
But Heineke does silly stuff all the time. The thing I would say if I was advising,
he does
Arthur
different
Smith,
silly stuff.
He does different silly stuff. I would say run some more zone read with Ridder.
Mm-hmm.
I think that changes the complexion of that offense overnight. So
for sure, Lions and Ravens, possibly game of the day. I mean, it's game of the daylight, that's for sure. Philly, Miami tonight's going to be a good one on Sunday Night Football. But Lions and Ravens, man, Detroit goes and wins this. We brought back our NFL tiers this week on the show.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And our top cut, if you will, is prime contenders.
Yeah.
Teams where you have no qualms about this team could wind up in the Super Bowl, and I wouldn't be surprised at all.
Detroit made it?
And Detroit was the first team cut.
Really?
We put them in the puncher's chance category.
Interesting.
Anthony overruled me on that. I wasn't willing to fight for it quite yet. If they win this game, they're in prime contenders when we do the tiers on Thursday.
They're one of the top 4 best teams in football right now. And I don't think you can debate that. Obviously they need to play, teams like the Ravens win those games, but they beat the Chiefs week 1. They've done some stuff this year. They're gritty. They're tough. They've got a formula. They've got an identity. The defense is playing good football. And then the Ravens, right? New offense with Lamar at the helm there, and they look good. They just haven't quite stuck it together in some of those losses. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Steelers and Rams. I feel like the Rams should be favored by more than 3. I know the Steelers are 3-2, but their offense is bad, and the Rams' offense is good. I mean, their defense is I don't say totally dependent on T.J. Watt.
It is, though.
But it's largely dependent on T.J. Watt. He did miss practice for 1 day this week with a heel issue. He was fine. Doesn't have a game status. He's playing.
Okay.
I don't know. I got a bad feeling for L.A. on this one.
You think they're going to lose?
Where
is it? Is it in
It's
Pittsburgh?
in L.A.
It's in L.A.
But Steelers fans travel like crazy.
No,
And
it's
everyone travels to L.A. because they want to go to SoFi.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Rams got that.
I have no good football reasons. I feel like Vegas is pulling me one direction.
No, I just feel like your point. The Pittsburgh offense is not good. I feel like Matthew Stafford is playing, maybe not statistically, but from an analytics, completion percentage, difficulty. He's playing elite football. I bet on elite quarterbacks. Kenny Pickett is not that guy.
Fair enough. That's good football analysis. Watch Pittsburgh win. Cardinals and Seahawks, divisional game. Cardinals are playing everyone tough. They're just not that good. It is going to be interesting, though, because Kyler Murray's on his way back soon, potentially.
Yeah.
They opened up the 21-day practice window, I believe, for him, coming off of IR. So, he's coming back. And they want to take a look at him with that coaching staff in Arizona. Seattle, obviously, one of the best rushing teams in football. Kenneth Walker playing well. He's already got 6 touchdowns on the year. Seattle favored by 9.5 in this one at home.
Wow, that's
a big number.
I think Arizona covers that. Because I feel like they're just a competitive, tough football team. But
Yeah.
I think that's actually going to be a sneaky fun game. So
this one could be stinky fun or sneaky fun. I said stinky fun. That kind of actually might be correct.
It's more.
It might have been a Freudian
more
slip.
accurate, yeah.
Packers and Broncos. I have no idea if Jordan Love's any good. Some weeks he looks great. He looks the part in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But then you watch and you're like, oh, the football did not go to the right place.
Correct.
The Broncos are just a bad football team.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's not much to add there. Neither one of these teams is exciting to me at the moment, right? Packers I was very excited about. I thought their defense was playing really good. They've got a lot of really talented guys over there. They've got offensively, they've got that Watson kid, very athletic, big play potential. It just hasn't come together. I think a big part of that is because where is Love at? The Broncos I think are interesting because I think Russell Wilson is playing better than he was playing last year. I think there's stuff there, but
they're also trying to figure out how many parts can we sell off.
Correct. Yes.
So they are in fire sale mode with the trade deadline looming. Chargers and Chiefs. Chiefs traded, by the way, speaking of teams that are doing the transaction market, they traded for McCole Hardman this week. They get him back from the Jets, a familiar receiver for Patrick Mahomes. I got Kansas City in this one. They're favored by 6. The Chargers, man, they're just they're so talented, but they're so frustrating.
Yeah. I think the Chargers play them tough. I think they cover. I think the Chiefs win, but I just think they're going to score a lot of points. You're right. What's his name? Mike Williams is out. I forgot about that. He hurt himself. What was that 2 weeks ago?
And the Chiefs' defense is playing lights out.
It is playing really well.
Killing
yeah.
it.
So maybe actually I'm gonna change my thought there. Kansas
Convinced
City.
him.
Yes.
Convinced him. Game of the day, certainly. Dolphins and Eagles on Sunday Night Football. Philly 3-point favorites at home. I got Miami going on the road and pulling the upset, though. I think the Dolphins are for real as for real can be. They are so talented. They know exactly what they're doing offensively. And defensively, they're doing more than enough. Their defense isn't bad either.
Yeah, no, I think I agree. I think that they're a tough football team. I just think after last week's loss, the Philadelphia Eagles are going to come out and say, hey,
all right, it's time.
It's time. Not that it's time that we're the real deal. And this is going to be a competitive football game. But I think the Eagles do a lot of stuff offensively that is going to be problematic for the Dolphins. They're going to possess the football a long time. If you look at both of their losses that this year, they come on the road in outdoor stadiums. And so whatever that is, I don't think the weather's going to be bad. I don't think anything like that. But I do think like the Eagles are built a specific way, and the Dolphins are like a Ferrari. They need kind of the right conditions to be successful. So I'm going to go Eagles here. And what's the spread on this?
Philly by 3.
Yeah, it's going to be a close game, irrespective. But I think the Eagles win.
All right, and then last but not least, 49ers and Vikings. The Vikings, obviously, without Justin Jefferson, really struggling to do much of anything. Kirk has 14 touchdowns, 4 picks on the year, but a lot of that came with JJ on the field. Yeah. 49ers trying to bounce back from that really nasty loss against Cleveland, where their third-round kicker missed a game-winning field goal.
What's the injury report for them? Because I know there was a lot of guys.
Debo is out. Debo is actually out the next 2 weeks. McCaffrey, questionable still. So they're definitely banged up a little bit.
I think that's definitely going to test kind of this like stars around a average quarterback type of thing, and like what is Brock Purdy? As I know, Minnesota's defense is not very good, but like as the pieces start to kind of get pulled away from Brock Purdy, as he has to do more and more each week, can he continue to play good football? And I think this will be a really interesting litmus test for that.
I mean, the Vikings are not a good defensive team, so hopefully he pass. If you can't pass this litmus test, then that's trouble.
But it's going to change, man. It's going to be tough.
Yeah,
so.
For sure. All right, that is our look around the NFL. We also have the inactive list for the Commanders, and there is a couple of interesting names on it. We'll tell you who's in and who's out. What we make of it next is the Take Command Pregame Show, live from Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor. Craig Hoffman, Logan Paulsen with you on Team 980 and 106.7 The Fan.
You get a really good feel for what your opponent's doing, like physically, one of the points of contention or nervousness going into a game is like, what does this guy do physically? How does he move? Obviously you can study film, but there's a different opportunity to kind of run a route on a guy and put your hands on somebody and kind of know what they like to do to shed and kind of get a feel for it. And so as you get to know them better and they get to know you, you kind of start playing that advanced like chess metric. And I think the familiarity breeds like a faster game quality, because like I know exactly what this defense is. I know exactly how they're going to play this run. We ran it against them 6 weeks ago. Let's see it again. And we ran it against them last year twice. You know what I'm saying? So you get a really good feel for that. And obviously like the fans in the stadium are just a little bit more up. And so I definitely think the divisional thing is real. And you talk about it differently. You talk about divisional games in the week in a different way. So it's definitely something that's 100% real. And, in the context of the Giants, like for whatever reason, they just have a good feel for this team. They have a good feel, good opportunity. Like, in our Take Fives, we talked about some Giant stories. Like I felt like during early in my playing career, I had a really good feel for what the Giants were doing. Like, I don't know what it was. When I went in that game, I just felt like I knew them really well. And sometimes when the Giants play the Commanders, it's like they just have a good knack and feel for kind of the holes and the wrinkles in the defense and ways to scheme stuff open. So I think divisional games are so fun. They're so fun to watch. They're so fun to play in. And I think they're fun to talk about because, like you said, even in this game where, we're going to talk about the Giants here in a second, Giants aren't a very good football team at the moment. Like, I don't know. And like Santana Moss is this is one of my favorite things he does. He's very consistent with his points of analysis. And anytime we're playing a divisional game, he's like, you can't count the other team out. And I think that's 100% accurate. And so whatever the record is, however bad the Giants have played, like this team, the Commanders, need to come and like put their best foot forward and just say like, we are the better football team, we're the better roster, and play like it. And I think ultimately that's what this game comes down to.
It is the Take Command Pregame Show live from Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor. I'm Craig Hoffman. He is Logan Paulsen. Of course, live on 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980. Also live on YouTube in both places, where if you're watching, you can see Logan. We have reached the Craig is going to stand for a segment portion of the show.
It's that time.
Inactive list is out, not only, of course, for the Commanders and for the Giants, but across the NFL. So we'll get you in just a moment some of the key inactives for your fantasy situations as well. The injury report is brought to you by the Centers for Advanced Orthopedics. More physicians, more locations, more advanced care centered around one thing. You visit CFAortho.com. For the Commanders, inactive: Christian Holmes, KJ Henry, Trent Scott, Chris Paul, Curtis Hodges, Mitchell Tinsley, F.A. Obata, and then it's worth mentioning that on the Giants inactive list is Daniel Jones, so it's officially Tyrod Taylor as expected for the Giants today. And, Logan, I think it's interesting. Holmes is one of the key special teamers for the Commanders, but he's been injured. He was out last week. They called up Tariq Castro-Fields from the practice squad yesterday, as well as Abdullah Anderson.
Yep.
Castro-Fields was awesome last week on special teams.
Yep.
And then Dejon Harris, who they signed to the active roster, he could have potentially been an inactive guy. They keep him up. Ultimately, it's Holmes who they, I guess, let rest another week, and then they'll see. Moving forward, is Holmes the guy that they want to keep on the active roster? Do they wind up switching Holmes and Castro-Fields? That could be an interesting call, backup roster stuff that perhaps happens this week. But ultimately, they choose to stick with a guy that helped them last week, and as opposed to getting extra insurance on teams in terms of keeping Holmes active if he's indeed healthy enough to play, they say, no, Emmanuel Forbes is going to be active. They keep that depth at corner with Kendall Fuller still managing that knee, even though Forbes doesn't play any special teams at all.
Yeah, and it'd be interesting to see maybe if Forbes plays teams this week. I don't know. That would be kind of if Ron has said in the past, and I have no insight on this. I'm just speculating based on stuff Rod said about different players. With Diami, he used to say that was something that he thought was helping him develop confidence as an NFL player and get used to the NFL physicality, is this idea that you got to kind of be in the mix a little bit. And so maybe this is a good opportunity for him. He's not the biggest guy in the world, but I'll tell you, if you want to make a guy tougher and get him playing with good technique, have him cover a punt. Those double vice guys will show you what's up real quick. So, that's definitely a possibility. Do I think it's likely? Probably not. But I would be curious to see if they, at some point this year, engage in something like that while he's kind of in this weird limbo. Or
they should.
Yeah.
Having a guy on your roster who is intentionally not going to play any snaps is not. It's not smart.
Yeah.
Unless it's a backup quarterback or a backup O-lineman. But even the backup O-linemen tend to play field goal block
and stuff. Yeah.
Or field goal protect, punt protect potentially. Depending on the guy, but yeah.
Punt protect. Look at you getting out there deep.
Maybe most of the line.
No, they'll do the field goal thing, but you need those guys because if you have an injury, there's not anybody else that can fill in.
Right, 100%. So at the end of the day, that's interesting. Also interesting, F.A. Obata, who returned from injury last week.
It is kind of interesting. Yeah.
They ultimately call Abdullah Anderson back up off the practice squad. Anderson's played a lot of football and played well for the Commanders this year. He gets the nod against this banged-up offensive line of the Giants. To me, that says, Obata is a guy that, we like what we saw from Casey. Ironically, when Tuhill wasn't getting a lot of snaps all season long, last week he plays great and gets great production.
Yeah.
Now it's okay, we're good with Tuhill and Smith-Williams. Now that Obata's back, we need an actual 3 technique as opposed to position flexing F.A. in there. So let's go Anderson. I just think it's an interesting, weird rotation.
Yeah, and I think it's also interesting because, one thing about FA is he doesn't play teams. So, that's not a spot that you can, as everyone's like, oh, well, why don't you put Casey down or James down? But both those guys play teams, and they can play
well.
Teams. Yeah. So, I think that's where, again, you see kind of on the back end of the roster, the 53, the 45 on game day, you see the importance of teams there for sure. That is interesting because I think Abdullah plays well, but I think they were really excited about what FA was going to bring from a pass rush standpoint. So what I would say is, how are they going to kind of supplement that? Does James move into kind of a 3-technique pass rush role in certain situations.
He's played that some this
year. He's done that, and I think he's, I don't think he's as good as Fa at it, but he does have that ability, and that does give you some flexibility in terms of rotation. Then Abdullah is maybe your first or second down guy, and also I do think Abdullah is a bigger guy. I think he's like 290, 295.
Yeah.
But I think he does a pretty good job of rushing the passer from inside. I think he's actually weaker as a run defender. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how they allocate those resources today. Obviously, your 4 main guys are going to probably play the most. But like we talked about on the last show, I think that rotation is so important for keeping those guys fresh. And last week was the first week where they really were deliberate about continuously rotating those guys. And I think
except for Chase. Chase still played a crazy amount of snaps, and I think it hurts his production. Chase had 1 tackle last week. That's it.
There's been, like you hear stuff, like is it true or not, but that they want to rotate him more. They want him to be fresher, longer. And and again, you see, I think Montez, when he comes out for Casey, what Casey brings to the defense, like I think James has similar energy to him. And it's good to kind of give tackles different guys to have to prep for and pass block against. And I think that would be good for Chase to understand and mature in that understanding of like, hey, man, I don't need to play 100% of snaps. I could play 75 and have my 75 be like lights out. So it'll be, again, that's something I think is a really interesting storyline. Also, you mentioned that who's the backup linebacker that they have up?
Dejon Harris.
Dejon Harris, and I wonder if that's correlated to possibly Kalik playing a little bit more on defense, and they need another kind of linebacker body in there. And again, Kalik only played 8 snaps. I thought that was great, but maybe they say, hey, we can get a guy in here who's got good energy, got good pop, gives us a little bit more flexibility with defensive structure. So those are all things that an active list, it's kind of silly sometimes, but I do think it kind of says maybe this is the way they're thinking about it, and some things to keep an eye on if you're watching the game.
Other big names in and out around the NFL. Update your fantasy lineups accordingly. Deshaun Watson officially active in Cleveland. Kareem Hunt active as well for the Browns. Marvin Jones Jr. out today for the Lions. Has personal issue of some kind, so he is not traveling with the team. David Montgomery is out, so Jahmyr Gibbs should get a lot more action today for Detroit.
Jameson Williams, right? If the receiver's out too.
For sure. Garoppolo officially out for Las Vegas. Hunter Henry active in New England. Those are some of the big ones. Obviously, some big names on the block, if you will, in the 4 o'clock games as well. Those will come out 90 minutes prior to those 4:05 kickoffs. When we get back here on the Take Command pregame show, we'll take a look at the Giants offense and this Washington defense. Can the Commanders' D-line be dominant today against a banged-up Giants offensive line? And if not, how do they still be successful? And why might that be the case? We'll explain next. Take Command pregame show live on a Burgundy and Gold game day from Tap Sports Bar at MGM National Harbor.
We have a new submission to the Real Things Hall of Fame. The F-35 is a fighter jet that the military has. It is very expensive. Very expensive. The F-35 program costs the U.S. government / the military over $1 trillion. Like, this is one of the most expensive things in the U.S. government's budget is the program that makes these planes. Each one is incredibly valuable and expensive. And something happened during a training mission, but this jet leaves, they go on a training mission, and it's in stealth mode, apparently, and the pilot has to eject. So the pilot's like, I'm up out of here. Pilot lands relatively safely, has, I think, an injury or two that has to be tended to, but, like, is alive. But then they lost the jet. So the jet disappeared from the radar. The U.S. government's like, well, we don't know where the jet is. And so the Buford, which is the suburb not suburb, it's in South Carolina. It's by Charleston. Close enough. If people are actually from there and don't want to say that and want to say it's by Hilton Head, I know I grew up in the state. Leave my geography alone for the sake of the story, which I've now made less efficient by telling you all of those things because I can't help myself. Talk about a plane crash. Hey, we're back. So the F-35 gets essentially lost, and they're like, I don't know where this very expensive warplane went. And lo and behold, sometime the next day or later that day, it crashes somewhere, and luckily no one's hurt. But this $100 million plane is gone. Whoopsies, we crashed the plane. And this is an eyewitness account from a Charleston area television station of someone who heard the crash.
In the bathroom taking a shave, and I heard a screeching, something between a screech and a whistle. I said, what in the world is this? And I heard a boom. Then my whole house shook.
White says he didn't realize it was a plane at the time, so he didn't call anybody.
The first thought came to me, I said, what's a meteorite coming out of space or something? And I said, well, if the airplane, it needed to be reported, but the thing was flying just too low.
The F-35B airplane wreckage created an extensive debris field.
That voice, we gotta get a drop for the voice because it might be better than Steph Curry's.
I was gonna say, I feel like we have to do a comparison. Can I pull this off with? Yeah, okay. So I had to compare or see if I had enough channels on the board to do this. But we got Steph Curry here. We got Charlie Brown here. And we got our mans here.
His is better, though.
I think his is the best one. His is definitely, it's not quite Charlie Brown. It's definitely close to Steph Curry, though.
Yes.
We'll see you tomorrow. Take Command Pregame Show. It's the final hour live from Tap Sports Bar at MGM National Harbor. Come down, hang out, grab a drink, grab some food, watch the games, Commanders, Giants, or otherwise. They're all on here at Tap Sports Bar. We are on for one more hour on 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980 on YouTube as well. If you're driving around, get home, turn on your smart TV. We'll keep previewing this game for you, including with Danny Rouillet at 12:30. All right, Logan Paulsen, let's take a look at the Commanders and Giants matchup a little bit closer when the Giants offense is on the field. We now know it'll be Tyrod Taylor. Officially, that's what we expected. And a bunch of backup offensive linemen. That is a bad and banged up unit. But it's important to remember, like we said earlier in the show, for those that are just tuning in, the Giants know this.
Yeah.
So how do you think they approach the game, and how can the Commanders' defensive line still have a huge impact as we hope that they would?
Yeah, so I think when you're just breaking down the Giants, obviously they've got a whole bunch of playmakers, guys that are kind of have some explosive traits. Obviously Slayton is a guy that they rely on a lot. He had a couple explosive catches against the Bills. Is Wan'Dale Robinson playing? I know he was hurt earlier this week.
Believe. I'll look up the rest of the Giants.
But he has some explosive playmaking ability. Darren Waller, explosive playmaking ability. Saquon Barkley, explosive playmaking ability. So lots of guys in the context of this offense that can make plays. And I think, Tyrod Taylor is a guy that's been around the league for a long time. I think it's his 14th year, 13th year, something like that. So he's kind of been around, seen everything. But I like we've talked about, the limiting factor of this group is the offensive line. And they know it. We know it. Everybody in the nation knows it. And as a coach, you can kind of game plan around it. And I think what you're really hoping for is, kind of managing the clock, managing your situations, not taking negative plays, not turning the football over, and really finding ways to negate the effectiveness of that defensive line. So we're going to run the ball, we're going to play action, we're going to keep, we're going to get out of the pocket, we're going to do little waggles, we're going to find different ways to set up, we're going to hit the quick game, we're going to hit screens, and we're just going to kind of live with that game flow, understanding that the second we try to do anything drop back or really push the ball vertically down the field, we're exposing ourselves to unnecessary risk, and we're letting that defensive line impact the game in a way that we're not comfortable with. So that's where, like, kind of we alluded to this earlier, like, you know, EB wants to, we want EB to be a little bit more conservative offensively, but I'm also kind of like, be a little bit more aggressive. Like when you look at, be a little bit more aggressive offensively. It's like this catch-22, because if you can get up 14-0 on this team, like the defensive line will have will be insanely productive. They'll have a ton of sacks, ton of pressures. They'll be able to get after the quarterback. They'll be able to do all the things the fans want them to see. But if that game flow stays 3-0 through the first quarter, or 7-0 through the first quarter, if I'm the Giants coaching staff, if I'm Daboll, if I'm Kafka, I'm like, we're okay. We are okay. Our defense is playing well enough, keeping us in it. We can still abide by some of these principles that we're talking about in terms of being uber conservative offensively and insulating our offensive line. The second we get to a 2-score situation, now all that conservative stuff that we've been game planning and prepping all week is out the window. Right?
We're just going to have to drop Tyrod back and pray.
And so I think that's kind of what I would be looking for, because like you said, they know they're not good. We know they're not good, but they can.
How do you make that matter is kind of the question.
Yes, and how do you make it matter?
Right.
That's the whole point of it.
The game flow is so important. By the way, bad to worse, worse to worst, worst to worst statistics.
Yeah.
Evan Neal, not that he's really been any good this year for the Giants at right tackle. He's also inactive today.
No
was
kidding.
Questionable. So,
oh my
the Giants,
gosh.
John Michael Schmitz, starting center, out. Evan Neal, starting right tackle, out. Matt Pert, Andrew Thomas, the starting and backup left tackle, out. Justin Pugh, straight off the couch, straight to left guard, now straight to left tackle. And then I don't know who's playing, right? Hopefully they know. I mean,
it's the guy they brought in from Atlanta.
Bad.
The guy they just signed from Atlanta.
By the way, Adoree Jackson's also out for them, so their secondary gets a little worse on the defensive side, which means that perhaps you can get Jahan Dotson or Terry McLaurin deep on a rookie corner. That's not Deontay Banks, because clearly their best DB or best corner is now the rookie Deontay Banks.
Yes.
Out of Maryland.
He's playing well.
He's playing well, but like is still a rookie. So everything is rolling the Commanders' way pregame. They've got to continue to make that happen during the game. I do think that even like the domination from the Commanders' defensive line. Yes, you'd hope they get 5-6 sacks today, and you get that game flow, and there's opportunities, and they take advantage, and they actually finish.
Yeah.
But even if it is that more conservative flow, like they can make plays in the backfield. They should be able to do things against this defensive or this offensive line because of the talent disparity. I think the question I would have too about that part of it, about the like run defense kind of part of it, is if you're Jack, if you're Scanina, if you're Ryan Kerrigan, if you're the in the ears of these guys, are you saying like, hey, go make a play, or just do your job?
I think it's do your job, because I think when you look at last week versus Atlanta.
Yeah, how aggressive do you need to be?
I think they were just doing their job. And you look at Allen, John had a great game last week. Payne had a great game last week. Those two guys inside played awesome, just doing what they're supposed to do and kind of being where they're supposed to be. And this week, man, you cannot get out of your lane. You cannot bust a run fit, because Saquon Barkley, when you look at his most productive games, they're against the Commanders, and it's because guys aren't fitting runs correctly. Even in the Bills game, in the second half, when Saquon breaks off that 43-yard run to bring his average to 2 yards a carry or whatever it was, like that is because two guys were not in the right position. So just do what you're supposed to do. This team, they're way under-talented at the moment. They're way under-talented, right? In terms of offensive line at the moment. And, like, that's the backbone of your team. You can't just do what you're supposed to do. Play good, sound defense, and the plays will come. You don't need to press against this team. It's not like they're way better. It's not like you're playing the Kansas City Chiefs where we got to be throwing everything we possibly can. We got to be kind of playing over our skis. No, do what you're supposed to do. Be where you're supposed to be. Play good defense on first, second down. Get in those third and long situations. Pin your ears back, rush the passer. Keep the quarterback in the pocket. All those things have to happen today. And if you just trust that, you'll have that 5-6
and I think
sack performance.
it's an easier sell for the coaching staff because, you want to be really aggressive because we want to get turnovers. Their best turnover game of the season was last week.
Yeah.
Like, you did the things well. You got them in bad down and distance situations. You made Devin Ritter beat you. you then brought some pressure in some key third down, some key obvious passing situations, and Ritter threw you the football. Like Tyrod Taylor's a veteran, but sometimes I think we misconstrue what that means. It's like Tyrod Taylor's going to throw some interceptions. Like it's not like he's interception proof. If he was, he'd probably be a starter.
Right.
He's been a career backup for a reason.
And he's a little bit more loose with the football. Like he's a little bit more aggressive down the field, but that aggression comes with a cost in this case, especially behind a banged up group. So be where you're supposed to be, do what you're supposed to do. Trust that the rush is going to get home as a coverage player, and it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. Jack, bring a little bit of pressure. Don't go crazy. That is the formula for this game. Trust yourself, trust your team, trust your offense. Play complementary football, which we talked about with the offense, and this will come. It'll come.
In terms of coverage structures, something similar to Atlanta. Do you want to make sure that you're in, what I don't want to say percents, but like when are you manning up? When are you going zone? How much of the zone match? How much of the softer stuff are you playing?
Yeah, and I think Jack's done a really good job of getting into some like 2-man, some true 2, some Tampa 2, a little bit more than he did last year, and that seemed last week to have settled everybody down, which was really nice, I thought. So if you found something that the guys are, because that's one thing, like when guys aren't playing the right techniques like you talked about, when guys aren't playing in the right position like you talked about, like sometimes they don't have a good grasp of that particular thing. And even though that's what you want to do and that's what you want to be, take a step back, man. Say, hey, this is something we found that they are comfortable and confident with. Let's lean into that. And I think that's the right approach. Like you had something that worked well last week. I'm not saying run it exactly the same, but at least you now can identify, okay, they understand how we want how this should look, and they're going to play it better. So I think that's what I would say is just not exactly the same, but that kind of outline works. You've got those cover 2 structures work well for you. Don't run them every play, but that should be a big part of what you're doing. The pressure on third down was excellent. You didn't go crazy selling the farm, and then can you just limit mental mistakes? Because even though they played well last week or better last week, there was a couple mental mistakes that you're like, man, if Desmond Ritter's a better quarterback, they're in a little bit of trouble here. So.
I mean, it's important to remember along those lines that like an inferior call executed well is way better than the perfect call executed poorly.
100%.
It's a game of execution. And you can always use the calls to set up your players for success, but ultimately they've got to be able to execute. So if you find something they're comfortable in, that's that one. Run that.
Run that.
All right. We get back on Fridays on the Hoffman Show. We pick 6 players who we think are going to have a big impact on the game on Sunday. Then here on Sunday, before said game, we run those 6 by Logan and see what he thinks. It's our pick 6 on the Take Command Pregame Show next here on a Burgundy and Gold game day.
Was it Cincinnati?
That's depends on the story, but maybe we were playing Cincinnati.
So Logan catches this touchdown.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that was Cincinnati. Yep.
It was Cincinnati. So we put in this play, and it was like, I think we called it Hoss Juke or something like that. I can't remember what we called it in that offense, but Logan's on a seam, right? So he's our vertical threat, taking the top off the defense.
Digging out, guys.
We're talking in the week. I don't think we ever said it in the install with those guys, but they're like, listen, Logan's not even in the progression. He's taking the top off this thing. We're trying to work this little option route down. And they bust this coverage. And I mean, he is screaming wide open.
I wasn't even supposed to be on the play. They were supposed to sub somebody else in because I thought I was too slow to run this route. Just for the context here for everybody.
So he's screaming wide open. And I'm like, Matt, throw it at his back shoulder. You might hit him in stride. If you try and back shoulder him. Threw it right at him. He catches it. It was an awesome touchdown. Just the celebration afterwards was so much fun. For me, it was always fun celebrating the touchdowns with the guys that didn't score them all the time. Like
take that, Julio Jones.
Yeah, and I'm not. I'm saying that, but like. Your role for us was you did the dirty work. And when you see guys that do the dirty work get rewarded for it, that was really cool. Something I'll never forget. The caveman.
Yeah.
And the caveman was in there in the end zone celebrating. It was awesome.
So there was this play where we call it like it was 19 Zorro. So basically like versus a 3-4 structure with an outside linebacker who is Von Miller in this case, I would get help from the fullback, like on inside help. So I could be really aggressive on my reach, really violent to the reach. And so it's me and DY, and DY, is a physical son of a gun. And so we take Von Miller and we put him, like, no joke, in the water cooler. Like, we put him way out there on the sideline. And we were like, this guy ain't nothing. Like, we're going to, we were so fired up. And so it ended up being like a 25 or 30-yard gain. So we were all fired up. And then Kyle's like, all right, let's come back to it. So, like, 2 plays later, we're running again, and we're running to the right. And I was like, oh, man, we are about to tee this dude up real quick. Just tune him up nice and good. And so I go out to get him. And I'm firing off the ball. My hat's low. I'm flat back. And I swear to God, like he was about as close as my hand was to my face. And he just disappeared into like mist. And he like swung me and I fell right on my face. And I just was like, oh my gosh. And like I went back and watched the film, and it was crazy how quickly he was able to like do his little basketball weave and then like just disappear from my vision and get inside and make the tackle. And I was like, oh, so now he's upset. So then the next play, I'm like all tentative and nervous. And I felt like Vaughn did. I watched this on film, so I knew he did this, but he does a really good job of like kind of like playing it like a boxer a little bit. You know what I mean? Like kind of rope-a-doping you a little bit. So like he lets you get one, right? Where I got after him. He makes you look like an idiot. And then the next time I was super tentative on him, and he literally did like a double stick, like he was going to make me miss, and then just grabbed my neck and then threw me over the pile. I was like, man, this is going to be tough. I got to like think of a plan here in the next 15 minutes so I don't look like an idiot for the rest of the game. But, when you're playing elite football players like him, like there's a reason they're elite. So if you get one on them, it's probably because they want. Probably because they're letting you get one.
It's a trap. It's a trap.
It's a trap.
Take Command Pregame Show live here from Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor. That is Logan Paulsen. I am Craig Hoffman, and with you on 106.7 The Fan, the Team 980 on YouTube as well. All right, Logan, every Friday we do our Pick 6 on the Hoffman Show, which you can hear on the Team 980. That is at 6 o'clock. That's why we call it the Pick 6 at 6. Very clever, I know. Try not to be overwhelmed by how smart we are on our radio show.
You guys do a good job over there.
Thank you. It's just me fishing for compliments. Reeled another one in. All right, so we do our Pick 6. We pick 6 players who we think are going to have a big impact on the game. Anthony Haney, my producer, and I. And so we like to run through those here on the show, on the pregame show, and get Logan's thoughts on them. So we'll move quickly through some of these, take a little bit more on others. The first guy is Cody Barton.
These are guys that are going to have big impacts on the game.
Yeah, like if these guys play well, Commanders should win. These guys play poorly, yikes. Cody Barton, number 1. He calls the defense. Obviously, he's going to play a big part stopping Saquon Barkley.
Sure.
That was Anthony's reasoning. I think it's pretty obvious that he's like even more than a usual game because of, and by the way, also could wind up on Darren Waller some. Even more than a usual game, he's a guy that could have a big impact today.
Yeah, and I think, when you play middle linebacker in a defense, you're going to have a big impact kind of regardless. And I think with him, one of the things that sticks out is he played much better last week. There was much more energy, much more physicality. And again, maybe that goes back to kind of Jack saying, hey, we're going to simplify things a little bit. And I think that paid dividends for Cody. And I think it paid dividends in terms of his play speed, but also being in the right spot. So I definitely agree that when the middle linebacker is playing good football in conjunction with Jamin Davis, I think that leads to productive things for the defense, and I think that's an excellent pick.
All right, my first one was Nick Gates.
Love that.
Because
much better than Cody Barton.
Yeah, sorry, Anthony. This is how it goes.
I mean, you're an analyst. Anthony's a producer.
I do this. This is what I do. Thanks, Chris Berman.
Who was that?
Chris
Berman.
Berman.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Did you say that?
Yeah. Just kind of The point is, Nick Gates is the one who sets the protections.
Yeah.
And when we talk about some of the pressures that they're going to face this week, obviously getting it aligned correctly is critically important.
Yeah.
Like, which way are we sliding the line? All that kind of stuff. And, oh, by the way, Logan Paulsen, where did Nick Gates play prior to Washington?
Right. Yeah, New York.
He has seen these defenses before in training camp year after year after year. So hopefully he can do a better job than the multitude of centers did last year for the Commanders against the Giants in those two games, where there were free runners all over the place. So, Nick Gates, it was my number one pick.
I love that. I didn't even really think about or talk about this week the idea that like he's had a lot of familiarity with what they're going to do from a blitz standpoint. It'll be interesting to see if that has any carryover because, Wink does a pretty good job of game planning specific rushes versus specific offenses. So we'll see what happens. But for me, I think this is an excellent pick. In addition to that kind of cerebral component, is that he's going to be blocking probably the best player, defensive player in the division outside of Micah Parsons. Top 5 for sure is Dexter Lawrence. And he is playing excellent football right now. I think I mentioned this on the podcast. When you go watch their pressures,
he's responsible for like half of them.
Correct. And it's not like he's just bullying and being big and strong and getting after centers. And so Nick Gates has to put his big boy pants on. He struggled a little bit with Michael Pierce in the joint practice up in Baltimore, who, again, is one of those big kind of Goliath nose guards that have some athletic traits. And so obviously he has a precedent or history of struggling with that body type. So he's going to have his work cut out for him today. I doubt they're going to leave him on an island too much if possible. I think, you got Cosme and Sadiq in there. But that's a matchup that is going to have a huge impact on this game.
Without a doubt. All right, the third guy we picked in our pick 6 was Terry McLaurin. This was Anthony's pick.
Anthony, man, come on.
I like it, though, because you talk about the game flow. This is why,
okay.
Right? You talk about the game flow.
Yeah.
Terry's the guy that can bust that open better than anyone.
Yeah.
If he can get deep, he can make a big play. If he can create a big play out of something, hey, let's take a shallow cross, and all of a sudden it's a 70-yard gain. That really messes up the Giants. So, I mean, look, is it the deepest cut? No, of course not. He's the best player on the team. But he has a chance to really blow this game open in a way that nobody else does because he's the best player on the team.
Yeah, no, and I would say I think Terry's going to have an impact on every single game that he's in because, like you said, he's the best player on the team. He's going to draw good matchups. It'll be really, really cool to watch Banks match up with him. I think Banks has an excellent skill set. He's matched up with DK. He's matched up with some of the better receivers in the league already this year. But I would say, like the reason I kind of have a pause there is I think the more important matchup offensively for this team is going to be the running game, whether it's Chris Rodriguez, Gibson, or B-Rob. I think those guys are going to have much more impact in terms of kind of dictating that game flow, limiting Sam's exposure. But yes, Terry always huge factor, great matchup. Love that perspective. But I just think there's going to be other elements that I'd like to see involved more reticently early in this game. The running game being one.
Yeah, so my number 4, or my second pick, number 4 overall in our pick 6 was Logan Thomas.
Tell me about it.
One, against pressure, he's the guy closest to the ball, typically. So, like, as a quick release outlet, the Travis Kelce style, I'm going to turn around because I know my quarterback is in trouble, Logan Thomas has that responsibility. So Sam's ability to find Logan for quick, easy ones to avoid pressure is important. Also, what's the other way you combat pressure other than quick throws? You block it, and that involves, if there's extra blitzers, extra men. Who are the men, as you well know, the tight ends.
Yes.
So both as a pass protector, as a run blocker, by the way, if they want to be effective in that, and as a quick outlet specifically against pressure, I think Logan Thomas is critically important today.
Yeah, and I really like that. I like that. I also think when you're pressuring a lot, you're going to get a lot of man coverage structures, and I think tight ends traditionally draw better matchups. Number 41 for them, or Bobby Okereke, whoever that it is. I think Logan Thomas.
Mike McFadden. 41.
Mike McFadden. I think both those guys are playing good football for the Giants, both inside linebackers. But I also like the idea of Logan Thomas in a one-on-one situation with them. And can you maximize that one-on-one situation, get them out in a route, get them in empty, spread them out, get them in space, and let Logan do his work. So, yes, I agree. I think he would be a guy that I kind of have circled, maybe not as the primary guy, but as a secondary guy saying, hey, if we get the correct matchups in this game, he's a guy that could be dominant. You mentioned the pass protection. That feels like more of a John Bates type area of expertise, but Logan has done a great job with that this year so far outside of that Arizona game. So I really like that pick.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Bates, if you can get it by design, but you don't want it to be a tell, obviously, when he's out there, what you do. So Logan becomes really important in that. And apparently, Logan, it's National Tight Ends Day. I just saw that on television.
Yeah, it is. It is National Tight Ends Day. I just got a text from one of the high school coaches saying,
Happy National Tight Ends Day.
Thanks, yeah.
Maybe that's why Doc's here.
Maybe. That would be cool.
That would make a lot of sense. Anyway, all right.
I feel like Doc would have told us if
Doc would have come in with like a hat.
Yeah, like Happy Tight Ends Day.
Yeah.
But he did. We did talk about USC and UCLA, so that's pretty standard for Doc.
Yeah,
Appreciate
that's
that.
true. All right, Casey Toohill was Anthony's final pick.
I can't wait to hear about the
I mean, he is a guy that was productive last week, obviously.
Okay.
Can you get Chase off the field a little bit more and thus make him more effective when he's on it?
Yep.
The trust in Casey perhaps provides that outlet and opportunity. Also a guy that has some speed on the edge. And against Tyrod Taylor with the boot action that he's probably going to use a fair amount. Casey's a guy that not only has the speed to play that and finish with sacks like we saw last week as opposed to just pressures, but is a guy that has played it well in terms of reading it.
Yeah.
I used to watch – I love Ryan Kerrigan, and he's a great player. But, every week Ryan would love to chase a run and then watch the boot come out. And when I would watch film.
That's how they coach that. That's a coaching thing.
Yeah, I mean, sure. But you're just like, the ball's going that way.
Yeah.
Casey reads that really, really well. And I think that is going to be very important today against a Giants offensive line and a Giants play-calling scheme that is going to try and avoid drop-back pass at all costs.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. I also think that they are going to run their keepers and stuff a little bit differently this week than they did against Atlanta. So, it's interesting that you pick Casey. He's productive. I think the rotation thing is important, obviously. But I think the guys that I want to see be more impactful are the two horses. I want to see Chase and Montez get out there and be a little bit more.
You're killing Anthony because he picks Terry. Then he picks a deeper cut on the defensive end. You got to leave my guy some kind of.
But I'm just saying, right?
Yeah.
Let's get the. Come on, Anthony. What are we doing here? But no, I'm just
going to cut this entire segment into Anthony. What are we doing?
What are we doing? No, and I understand the importance, and it's really a piece that reflects the defensive line. But this week, there's been a lot. I think Montez has been quiet the last couple of games. I think Chase has been very productive from a pressure standpoint, but can he finish? Obviously, Casey, you'd like to see him continue that production. He's like second on the team in sacks with 3, so that's great. But, James, I want to see James. I want to see Ridgeway. I want to see all those guys be productive. And so maybe I'll just kind of project the defensive line in that Casey Toohill pick.
Sure.
Because you got to play with great discipline, great physicality. And I think everyone's hoping that whole group is a little bit more productive.
All right, last but not least, I picked Quan Martin because I think
can't
this
wait
is
to hear
a
about it.
big Buffalo nickel week personnel-wise. Like, they blitzed pretty well out of that last week.
Do you think he gets the nod over, like, Kalik, for example?
I think they'll probably use Kalik. Like, I think they're going to play some Buffalo, some base, but they're going to be in some version of that. Like, I don't think they're going to be in true nickel a lot. Now, they'll obviously be in it some because that is actually kind of their base defense, even if it's not base defense, if that makes sense. Like, that's their standard personnel, and Danny Johnson also played well.
Yeah.
But with Darren Waller as a guy that is really dangerous, I think the Buffalo nickel's appealing if you trust Quan there. Or put Quan somewhere else and let Cam take that matchup.
Yeah.
But I also think because the Giants are going to want to run the football, that slightly bigger personnel becomes very important. And I think Quan, obviously, at that point has a large impact on the game.
Yeah, and I think, Quan had like 8 snaps last week. I thought he did a good job. He had one mental mistake that I remember definitively. So can he cut down on that? Can you feel confident putting him out there? But I think Quan's an interesting selection because I don't know how much playing he's going to do because is it going to be Kalik? Are they going to put or Cam in the box? Is Percy going to be, who is the Buffalo nickel? What is the role allocation? But I'm definitely excited to see him play more. I think this is a cool week to do it because I don't think they're going to do anything like overly complicated offensively. So, I think Quan's a really interesting guy there. A couple names I'd like to shout out is Percy. Like, can he continue to grow and develop? He had one coverage bust last week, corrected it in game. Great job by him. But can he be that guy that I think we all hope in Forrest's absence? Then can Cam continue to develop? And because they're going to have to move him around a lot, like you're saying, for that Darren Waller matchup, for the Buffalo nickel stuff. for the post safety stuff. So maybe all three of those guys that kind of come together there.
Without question. All right, when we get back, we get Danny Rouillet's thoughts on the game, of course, co-host of Grant and Danny. And then we'll check in with Denton Day and the in-game show. Coming up, it is the Take Command Pregame Show live from Tap Sports Bar at MGM National Harbor here on a Burgundy and Gold game day.
What is it about the league that it doesn't seem to matter where the two teams are in their season?
I think it's a little bit of everything. I think you get a really good feel for what your opponent's doing, like physically. One of the things, one of the points of contention or nervousness going into a game is what does this guy do physically? How does he move? Obviously, you can study film, but there's a different opportunity to kind of run around on a guy and put your hands on somebody and kind of know what they like to do to shed and kind of get a feel for it. And so as you get to know them better and they get to know you, you kind of start playing that advanced chess metric. And I think the familiarity breeds a faster game quality, because I know exactly what this defense is. I know exactly how they're going to play this run. We ran it against them 6 weeks ago. Let's see it again. And we ran it against them last year twice. You know what I'm saying? So you get a really good feel for that. And obviously the fans in the stadium are just a little bit more up. And so I definitely think the divisional thing is real. And you talk about it differently. You talk about divisional games in the week in a different way. So it's definitely something that's 100% real. And, in the context of the Giants, for whatever reason, they just have a good feel for this team. They have a good feel, good opportunity. In our Take Fives, we talked about some Giant stories. I felt like during early in my playing career, I had a really good feel for what the Giants were doing. I don't know what it was. When I went in that game, I just felt like I knew them really well. And sometimes when the Giants play the Commanders, it's they just have a good knack and feel for kind of the holes and the wrinkles in the defense and ways to scheme stuff open. So I think divisional games are so fun. They're so fun to watch. They're so fun to play in. And I think they're fun to talk about because, like you said, even in this game where, we're going to talk about the Giants here in a second, Giants aren't a very good football team at the moment. I don't know. And Santana Moss is this is one of my favorite things he does. He's very consistent with his points of analysis. And anytime we're playing a divisional game, he's you can't count the other team out. And I think that's 100% accurate. And so whatever the record is, however bad the Giants have played, this team, the Commanders, need to come and put their best foot forward and just say we are the better football team, we're the better roster, and play like it. And I think ultimately that's what this game comes down to.
Take Command Pregame Show live on a Burgundy and Gold game day here from Tap Sports Bar at MGM National Harbor Logan Paulsen there. Craig Hoffman here on 106.7 The Fan and the Team 980. Danny Rouillet, co-host of Grant and Danny on 106.7 The Fan, joins us now. So, Danny, we're hoping for better success for your offspring's sporting events today. On the way to a baseball game right now, I hear.
That is correct. Yes, I've got my 5-year-old in tow with me. The Tim versus the pitching machine. That's how we isolate the matchup down. But he is a scrappy, hustling, do-gooder type player. We love having him on the roster. But guys, just your normal Sunday, right? Where it's like I'm a shuttle service and glorified snack provider, man. It's the best.
Yeah, I bet. We got soccer this weekend too, Danny, or no?
Yep. So I will be dropping my youngest off with his mom to then go to my oldest soccer game, which will already be in progress.
I see.
By the time I get there.
And what are our odds today in the soccer game? We feeling better about it? Because you called in 2 weeks ago and it
wasn't good.
Wasn't great.
No, it was not. We feel slightly better that they might cover, but we're not talking. This is not a money line play. You see what I'm saying? Like we're hoping to keep this thing within a touchdown. Yeah.
Okay. As for the game that probably more of our listeners are interested in, although many of them are interested in the Rouillet children's sports endeavors.
Oh, I'm sure.
It sure seems like, based off of where the Giants' offense is, that the Commanders should win this game. But we also know that should beat the New York Giants is not a thing the Commanders have been good at ever.
Yeah.
Where are you at going into this in terms of like your fan emotion, but also putting your analysis hat on?
I can't wait for the fan emotion. Can't wait.
Well, yeah, the analysis is obvious, guys. You could plug this in any computer, any spreadsheet, anything that does predicting. You take any bit of data, you would go, this is so obvious one team is better than the other. And it's not to say that, this Washington group right now is a juggernaut or, we're seeing a reincarnation of the 91 Redskins. Of course, that's not the case. The Giants are so beat up. They're so banged up. They weren't good when they were healthy. They're worse now. This should be a cakewalk. It should be not even doing the cakewalk. It should be going to a cakewalk, and your attendance is noted, and that's enough. But we all know that's not the case, right? Nobody should be feeling confident or comfortable. No one should feel anything other than a crippling, gut-punching, nauseating anxiety that accompanies an underachieving group that cannot play well against the New York Football Giants, full stop. So as a fan, I have zero confidence they'll do just the normal behavior. That's all I ask for is normal behavior. Normal behavior means you beat the pants off of this Giants team. Going to do, I have no earthly idea. They should, to your point, with this vaunted defensive line, 2 guys that are highly paid already, the other 2 in line to get major paydays as first-round picks, with all the hype and all the attention and all the accolades. If you can't do it here this week, when can you?
Gosh, I love it. I love just the fan rage. You know what I mean? What I would say to you, Danny, is just out of curiosity is Vegas has this game at 3. Right? Why do you think they have it so close then?
This is the question, right? It should make everybody know that on paper, obviously where no games are played, Logan, as you know, played at this level, on paper it doesn't matter. These are human beings. They're fighting for contracts, for continuation in their roles, and coaches are doing the same, and everyone's preparing as well as they can. That the boys that do this for a living and they sit atop these really, really, really nice buildings that are really high, not built off the fact that they know less than the consumer, looks at this matchup and says, it's going to be pretty close. Again, that should fill us all with a sense of dread. So to me, I really argue this is more about Washington than it is New York.
Sure.
Any evaluation of New York says this 1-5 team that's reeling with a ton of injuries, shouldn't be very well thought of here at this stage, right? They are not a group that could come out and beat many teams this weekend. That's obvious, that's clear, that's plain. But this is really about Washington and their ability, or lack thereof at times, to maybe rise to that challenge or step up and beat a team that, quote unquote, again, here's the word, that they should be able to beat.
Danny Rouillet with us, co-host of Grant and Danny on 106.7 The Fan. Starts at 2 o'clock each and every weekday afternoon. You can also listen to it, of course, live on the free Odyssey app. So we I've been kind of asking this question to ourselves. We asked it to Sheehan earlier, and I'll ask you now. From an offensive standpoint, do you want to see them kind of get after it, be aggressive, try to put this Giants team behind early and get the game flow in their favor? Or do you look at this Giants team that hasn't scored an offensive touchdown since week 3 and go, all right, they're not going to go, they're not very good. How do we make sure that we just don't make any mistakes and a more conservative offensive game plan accordingly from Eric Bieniemy?
No, it's a sharp question. I mean, to me, I hate the idea that I have to play scared or that I'm super worried that, oh, no, what if I screw up and then the Giants might score an offensive touchdown, and that's like a scary proposition. If this was a real NFL outfit, right, where in year 4 of a build, you had a juggernaut of an offense and a quality defense with, a really good personnel that fit everything, and there was continuity, you wouldn't have to play scared. You wouldn't have to go, ooh, what if we turn it over one time? You just beat the brakes off of this group, right? That's what you would do. But to me, the best game plan probably is let the Giants screw up. Play conservative. Give Brian Robinson a workout, and when he's tired, tell him he's got another 20 carries coming, right? Get Chris Rodriguez going to thump on the inside, just to make sure that you don't do them any favors. If you give the Giants a chance, they will screw up. They will lose this game because that's what the Giants have done 5 times throughout the year where they haven't even looked competitive as kind of the season has progressed. So best prescription for this game, it might be that conservative thing that you're talking about there, Craig. But ultimately, I'd like to get to the point where we don't have to do that, but this may be the best idea for this week.
I mean, is there any kind of worry or concern about the Wink Martindale defense getting after the quarterback? I know you said they should beat the brakes off of them, but so to me, that's the crux, right? Is that defense, despite kind of being statistically not great, they do create chaos, and this team I don't think does well with chaos, obviously.
100% on point, Logan, and that's the fear, right? That's why I'm almost saying, hey, let's be conservative. Let's be, Bill Callahan running out the clock type offense.
In the first quarter,
my favorite guy ever.
Yeah, the reason being, just as you said, it hasn't mattered the quality of pass rush or lack thereof of Washington's opponents to this point this year, right? That hasn't been a factor. They've quite simply struggled to protect Sam Howell. Part of that is on Howell. The other part, maybe the offensive line. We can parse up the blame, maybe as we see fit. But ultimately, that's their path, right? That's the Giants' ticket here in this game, is to get a turnover, is to, turn one of those sacks maybe into a sack fumble or force something from Howell and get a game-changing type moment. I want to prevent that. I'd like to be able to prevent it by Howell maturing, Howell being better, this offensive line being better. I just don't know that we're there right now at this point, right? So to me, I want to avoid those kind of third and long situations where those blitzes can get home. And if I'm a Giants fan, or if I'm the Giants, the gamble is going to be worth it today, right? It's going to be worth it to kind of get after Howell in a major way. Because, again, that's where his weakness has been. He's shown a proclivity to take those hits, to take those sacks, and that may be my best opportunity, not only to be in this game, but to win it.
All right, Danny, who you got today?
I think Washington wins one of the 17 ugliest games in NFL history. I think it's a 19-18 kind of game. I think the Giants score a touchdown. I think they go for 2 and don't get it at the end. I'm pre-irritated about it, but I think it's going to be one of those situations where we have more questions than answers come Monday morning.
Nothing like a pre-irritated Danny Rouillet. All right, we'll see if that irritation it was worth it tomorrow, 2 o'clock, 2 to 6:30 weekdays on 106.7 The Fan with Grant Paulsen. It is Grant and Danny. Enjoy your day, sir. At least
Thanks,
the best
Danny.
that you can.
You got it, boys. Love you. See you later.
All right, that is Danny Rouillet, everybody. When we get back, Denton Day joins us from our D.C. studios where he's preparing for the in-game show with Linnell Willingham. We'll get our keys to the game, our players to watch, and predictions. That is next on the Take Command Pregame Show on a burgundy and gold game day.
What is it about the league right now that it doesn't seem to matter where the two teams are in their season?
I think it's a little bit of everything. I think you get a really good feel for what your opponent's doing, like physically. What are the things, what are the points of contention or nervousness going into a game is like, what does this guy do physically? How does he move? Obviously, you can study film, but there's a different opportunity to kind of run a route on a guy and, put your hands on somebody and kind of know what they like to do to shed and kind of get a feel for it. And so as you get to know them better and they get to know you, you kind of start playing that advanced like chess metric. And I think the familiarity breeds like a faster game quality because like I know exactly what this defense is. I know exactly how they're going to play this run. We ran it against them, 6 weeks ago. Let's see it again. And we ran it against them last year twice. You know what I'm saying? So you get a really good feel for that. And obviously, like, the fans in the stadium are just a little bit more up. And so I definitely think the divisional thing is real. And you talk about it differently. You talk about divisional games in the week in a different way. So it's definitely something that's 100% real. And, in the context of the Giants, like, for whatever reason, they just have a good feel for this team. They have a good feel, good opportunity. Like, in our Take Fives, we talked about some Giant stories. Like I felt like during early in my playing career, I had a really good feel for what the Giants were doing. Like, I don't know what it was. When I went in that game, I just felt like I knew them really well. And sometimes when the Giants play the Commanders, it's like they just have a good knack and feel for kind of the holes and the wrinkles in the defense and ways to scheme stuff open. So I think divisional games are so fun. They're so fun to watch. They're so fun to play in. And I think they're fun to talk about because, like you said, even in this game where, we're going to talk about the Giants here in a second, Giants aren't a very good football team at the moment. Like, I don't know. And like Santana Moss is this is one of my favorite things he does. He's very consistent with his points of analysis. And anytime we're playing a divisional game, he's like, you can't count the other team out. And I think that's 100% accurate. And so whatever the record is, however bad the Giants have played, like, this team, the Commanders, need to come and like put their best foot forward and just say, like, we are the better football team, we're the better roster, and play like it. And I think ultimately that's what this game comes down to.
Wrapping up here on the Take Command Pregame Show, we're live at Tap Sports Bar, MGM National Harbor. Craig Hoffman, Logan Paulsen. Before we give way to Burgundy and Gold Game Day Live with Denton Day and Linnell Willingham. End of the show. It's our pleasure to welcome Denton in now from our DC studios for our keys to the game, our players to watch, and ultimately our predictions. Denton, how are you, sir?
Fellas, what's going on? How's everybody feeling? It sounds like you guys having a great time out there at Taps.
We are. It's always a great time. It's filling up, too. Not so many tables available, so people are on their way out. Don't do anything reckless on the roads, but be efficient in how you get here. I'll say it that way. All right, so we do our players to watch first. So let's start there, Denton, and then we'll get to our keys to the game and ultimately predictions. Denton Day, your player to watch.
So there's nobody off the table, right? We haven't gotten to the point this season where I can go everywhere still.
I would say that, like, even Terry and all those dudes are on. Yeah.
They're on the table. They're on the table.
All right, so my player to watch is going to be Daron Payne. You look at this Giants offensive line, and they got a bunch of what would be backups in the NFL. You look at their injury report, there's a whole lot of guys on the offensive line on their injury report. Daron Payne in the first couple games of the season, there were stretches where he was an absolute game wrecker. He was dominant. I would love to see a performance like that this afternoon. So Daron's my guy to watch. You got to take advantage of the matchups and make life difficult for Tyrod Taylor.
I like it. Logan, your player to watch?
I'm with that 100%. For me, I think it's the guy we talked about already. And it's I'm going to kind of cheat. Can I cheat? Can I have two guys here?
Am I going to stop you on National Tight Ends Day?
We make the rules, right? So for me, it's Nick Gates and Sam Howell. And I think just because the protection in this game is going to be so important, Nick Gates' matchup with Dexter Lawrence is going to be huge, but also him targeting the protection. Sam Howell understanding where those protections are going, understanding that Wink Martindale is not going to be messing around today. He's going to heat you up. If they can manage that, this is going to be a productive day for the offense because there is holes, there is space in the back end, but it's about Sam kind of making a weakness a strength in this game, and Nick Gates helping him do that.
Yeah, thanks for stealing my guy. I should have not let you cheat, especially since I'm kind of the one who put that in your head with the pick six pick. But
no, we were talking about that earlier this week.
Fine. I'm gonna go a little bit off the grid. I'm gonna go Chris Rodriguez. I think he's gonna get.
I like it.
Look, is he gonna get 25 carries? No, he's not probably gonna get 10, but he might get 6 to 8. And those 6 to 8 could wind up being really important in this game.
Yeah.
And look, if he gets 3 or 4 early and they go well, like I could see them continuing to ride him a little bit. It does seem like he's been able to get yardage in very limited spots this year. He's the guy that can help keep them on schedule if B-Rob is, for whatever reason, just not hitting the runs like they want to.
Right.
So I think Chris Rodriguez could play a bigger role. I'm going to put it this way. I think he could play a bigger role today than he's played in any game so far this season.
I agree with that.
Which isn't exactly a high bar, but is a bar.
But especially after his production in Atlanta.
Yeah.
I thought he looked very productive, very efficient, and the physicality's there. And I think that would be a nice thing to mix in this week, especially if the game flow is such that you're running the ball 20 to 25 times a game.
100%. All right, so now we go to our keys to the game. The way we do this, we give you a statistical statement. If the Commanders or the Giants do X, then the Commanders win. Denton, you're up first with your key to the game.
So for me, I'm staying on the defensive line. If the Commanders get 3 or more sacks, I think they end up winning this game because if you're getting 3 or more sacks, odds are you're getting a lot more pressures that maybe aren't resulting into sacks, but you're blowing up the offensive line and you're making Tyrod Taylor's life a little bit more difficult. He's a really good player, but he's also a backup for a reason. This is a game where you should be feasting on him. So I think if they get 3 or more sacks, obviously the more the better. I think they're in a pretty good spot.
No, I would agree with that in terms of defensive production. I think the thing that this comes down to for me is can you protect the quarterback? Like that is the number one thing. So if they can limit the New York Football Giants to 3 sacks in this game, I think that they probably win this football game. I think that is a definitive way that they win this game. I think that means they're in control. They're managing good situations. Also, I think just kind of another thing that I'm thinking about is if they score first and they get out to a lead quickly, I think that also is something that really helps them win this football game. So both those things are things that got circled in red. I'm excited to see if they get that done.
I mean, the only thing that I would worry about is if they don't give up sacks, but they give up pressures, and those pressures turn into turnovers, right?
Yeah. You definitely don't want that.
That's something that's.
It's more of a is Sam not taking a bunch of negative plays, and are they protecting him? Is really what I'm trying to get at there. So if it's a ton of pressures and he's throwing the ball over the yard and we get a ton of picks, not good. Not the business.
My way of combating that statistical potential anomaly is that I'm going to go number of plays. If the Commanders run 60 plays, they win.
60.
So that means you're efficient offensively.
That seems low, though.
They won with 50 last week.
They did. That is true. I think, but 50 and 3 turnovers is the other thing there.
For sure. But if they run 60 plays, I mean, I don't want to put it too high. If they run 80 plays, they win.
They will.
Yeah, obviously. Thanks. Great analysis. So I really think the bar is that low because of how bad the Giants are offensively. If the Commanders can just run 60 plays, be efficient enough offensively to stay on the field, they will have converted enough getting enough third down conversions, or maybe even staying out of third down to get the points they need to win this game. Will they win the game? Denton Day, that is the next question to you, sir. Prediction time.
So on Friday, I had a different answer because I wasn't sure who was starting at quarterback. But now that I know it's going to be Tyrod Taylor, and I don't want this to sound like a dig against Tyrod. He's played in this league for a lot of years, and he's been a successful quarterback. But this is a game that Washington should absolutely win if they have the hopes of being a playoff team. I think they do it tonight, or this afternoon, excuse me. I'm going to go 24-10. I think Washington gets it done.
All right, big win for Washington.
Earlier in the week, I was totally on the same page with you, Denton, but the more I think about it, the more I think about what the Commanders have struggled with. I think the Giants' defense is going to present some challenges. So I'm going to say 20-17 is the score I'm going to go with.
Yeah, I'm
still a dub.
I am struggling with this because, even though I think, I kind of think that the Commanders have a minimum. Their offense has been good enough this year that they're typically going to get to at least 20. Yeah. And I think with where the Giants are a little banged up on that side of the ball as well, Dory Jackson not playing, I think they can get to 24. I'm gonna work in a margin for error. I'm gonna knock it back down to 20, and I'm gonna go 20-13 Commanders, which is still stressful. It's still a one-score game. But I just don't think the Giants have the offensive firepower to get they'll get one touchdown because we get one of those errors a la Arizona where it's they had the one sack fumble or one pick where they have to go short field. But if the Commanders, honestly, another key, if Tressway punts a lot today, the Commanders should win. Do not turn the football over for Washington, and you should be in good shape. You're in great shape if you just keep listening to this here radio station because Denton Day and Linnell Willingham will take you through the game with the Burgundy and Gold Game Day in-game show, the live show, taking your calls as well. And then Logan and I will be back for Take Command postgame on YouTube after the game, or you can subscribe in your favorite podcast platform and get it first thing tomorrow morning. Listen on your way to work. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Take Command pregame show on a Burgundy and Gold Game Day.